publication that we are here to witness. Oyedapo Oyekunle, fondly called Dapsy Olorunyomi, Nigerian journalist, publisher of Premium Times, Chief Executive Officer, Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development, which was formerly known as Premium Times Center for Investigative Journalism. He's also the founder of the Wale Soyinka Center for Investigative Journalism. He was at a point Policy Director and Chief of Staff to the Executive Chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC. And in 2020, he was honored with the prestigious World Press Freedom Award by the Committee to Protect Journalists. Let's specially recognize Dapo. Dapsy. Thank you very much. My friend, we are blocking the view of the man who is hosting us here. Let us see him. Please, Dapsy. Thank you. And before I recognize the author, please join me in welcoming the Honorable Commissioner for Information, Kogi State, representing His Excellency, the Governor of Kogi State, Yahaya Bello, Mr. Kingsley Fanwo. Okay, right, that's you. Kingsley, good to see you. Oh, we only communicate by WhatsApp. Now I can put a smile to the face. I'm also very happy to welcome the former Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Federal Republic of Nigeria, Mr. Mohammed Bello Adoke, SAN CFRO. Where are you, sir? No. Ushers, please. Ushers, please. Let's welcome the distinguished son up this way. Mr. Mohammed Bello Adoke, you're most welcome. We're happy to have you here. Ushers, please do the needful. Musikili Mujid, thank you very much for bringing us all here today. He is the Editor-in-Chief and Chief Operating Officer of the Nigeria's Premium Times newspaper, which he co-founded. He is a multiple award-winning journalist and a member of the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. A 2012 Knight Journalism Fellow at Stanford University and a 2009 Ford Foundation International Fellow at the City University of New York, Mujid was a judge of the UNESCO World Press Freedom Awards. nexus between history and journalism. To think that letters and letter writing will constitute such an issue of interest to a journalist is quite intriguing. Congratulations, Premium Times. Congratulations. Who is jumping down from? Congratulations, one and all, for your presence here this morning. We are indeed thankful. Before I invite our chairman, may I recognize some of our other friends who are in the house. Mr. Taiwo Obe, who came in from Lagos. I know he's sitting right at the back because Lanre is also right there at the back. Tio, thank you. At least wave if you're not going to rise. Okay, we can see your hand. Fred Owawa, thank you also. Former editor of The Guardian and until lately of Tutor. Fredo. Okay, thank you. Kaderia Ahmed, I think I cited her a while ago. Kaderia? Oh, yeah, okay. Thank you, you're most welcome. Samson Itodo, Yaga Africa, thank you. Where are you with your political 101? Okay, right at the back. Dayo Ayeton, ICIR, we also thank you. We shall, of course, recognize other friends who are in the house. But at this point, please join me as I welcome the chairman of this event, most distinguished Nigerian. Please help us, Mr. Yusuf Alias here. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, the book reviewer, the ageless Bishop Kuka, very distinguished Nigerians, ladies and gentlemen. I kept on asking, why me? And when you are invited to the Lion's Den, I'm right in the midst of the creme de la creme of Nigerian journalism. The author asked whether I should bring a prepared text. But I thank my stars I didn't fall into that temptation. Because at the time he was telling me that I've not cited the work, I would have written something that would be totally at variance with why we're here. Luckily, I came in from outside of Nigeria yesterday, and I came here, grabbed a copy, and made me to lose some sleep. I didn't go to bed until around 1. Very unusual. I go to bed at 10. So it's a book that if you grab it, you are not going to leave it. I want to thank the author for the invitation extended to me. At least I've seen so many old friends. That was the way I was when we were together in Kwara. Now look at that. Seniaki has always been like this, even when he was Attorney General, so we don't have any problems. And of course, my brother from Yoruba Land, Rotimi Amechi, the job seeker like this, governor like that, minister. Of course, my brother, you all look Femi, Abu, you are reining it in. Don't you see the other Abu there, the commercial, he has maintained the thing. I want to say that I also thank the object of the book, the letter writer, We used to call people who wrote letters in those days. You go to them at the back of your places to type letters. This book, I hope, will revive the habit of letter writing. With the snippets of what I've gone through the book, I've gone through about 100 and something pages. For a man to have kept letters written in 1952 by his parents, the ones he started writing himself from 1969, I'm not sure not many of us there can trace our letters for 5 years. And no thanks to the internet now, the culture of letter writing, or even proper English, is dying. Most of us will text and we use shorthand. Instead of telling thanks, do TNX. And I think these are things that I believe this book should revive in all of us. The book reviewer is more than capable. But I must say that from the people I've read, I've gained quite a lot. It has thrown light on other books written by war generals, those who took part in the Civil War. You can put some of these books in context. Because in this book, you now see letters written at that point, which talks a lot to the point in issue about our Civil War and who did what and who failed to do what. The book is a call to duty that those who will rule this country should be people who are properly lettered. People who will be able to discern what is right from what is wrong by their own abilities. You could see clearly, reading through some of the work, especially the letters reproduced, that you will see the consistency of the letterman himself. So some things didn't just happen by chance about him and what he did to our country. First as a military head of state, and then as a president in Babariga. So I want to say that those who have called that our leaders should go through psychiatric verification. That may not be enough. You must be able to see leaders who have led in other areas before throwing themselves up, or the system throwing them up on the rest of us. And this point is clearly made if you have ever read the work of the founder of modern UAE. Many of us will be astounded that Emirates Airlines started out about 30 years ago with 3 wet-leased aircraft from Vietnam. And here is our dear country, which at the time has the largest airline in Africa, now having no airline at all. I want to challenge my comrades in the business of pen. Never mind, I read Mass Comm for about 3 weeks at the Polytechnic in 1977 before I found this new one that I'm doing. We should all take a cue from, I've read at least 12 books written about Trump while in office and about his administration and what he was doing. How many books have we seen about any of our presidents while in office by those who are the actors? You've seen one's written by the chief of staff of Trump. So my challenge to journalists generally is that please, let's make it our duty to unearth how our leaders do their business, knowing fully well that the well-being of these leaders translates to either our own well-being or lack of well-being. If they do it right, we are fine. If they get it wrong, we are in trouble. I also want to challenge all of us that the Nigerian project must not fail. But most of us here, we are elites. We should not encourage our children to japa. Yes, good. They can go and have very good education. Let them come back here. Because our forebears were forced into slavery, our children are going submitted to slavery now freely. And even some of us, imagine a 50-year-old person saying he's packing up and going outside of Nigeria. And the challenge there is simple. You can't leave your best and the brightest to go and develop other people's countries. Yours will remain the way it is forever. So those of us that are elites, of course, the first thing we should do actually is to ensure that our educational system is very good, so that we don't even need to go. Those of us who schooled here in the 70s, foreigners who are coming here for undergraduate studies. Today is a reversal of roles. And like late Chief M.K. Abiola said, I'm fond of that is a proverb. He said, you give birth to a baby in a house with corrugated iron sheet. When you wanted to do the naming, you now go to a thatch roof to do it. Is that progress or lack of it? We should ask ourselves, if as late as the 80s, early 80s, Americans, Britons, others who are coming here for undergraduate studies, today we now have to puzzle our children to Togo, Benin, to go and do undergraduate studies. What result do we expect? For me, these are the challenges that we must all take away while navigating the very difficult terrain we find ourselves, brought by all of us on ourselves. I've stopped blaming our leaders. We, the followers, are the replica, if not the worst side of the leaders. All the evils that we say our leaders do, we teach them, directly or indirectly. When you make evil demands on those who are public office holders, and there are people who are ready to support you, if they do not ask, they do not do what you ask for, how can we blame anybody? We all know that a minister has salaries, which usually, but at least we see some the publicized side of the salaries. How do you then ask a minister to give you a new car? No, minister, how will you get it? From legitimate earnings. But we all insist these are things that should be done. So if we insist on that, then you can't complain later that we have problems. So there is need for moral rebirth for our country. All of us must make up our minds what kind of country we want to live in, what kind of country do we want to be at. All of us that are here now, most of us are afraid to put our vehicles on the road and go to anywhere. This is something caused by all of us, directly or indirectly. And I pray that our brethren who are doing some of these negative things will not find a way even to come and catch us in the air. I mean, they did it, I hope they won't. They drove us off the roads. They've driven us off the trains. We should just walk the talk. I always tell people, we resort to prayers all the time. God has given us what we need to succeed on this place. So our duties, don't let us consign it to God. God is busy attending to people who are very serious. Until we put on our seriousness and we act it, we should not put our things on God, not the way we do here. We must pray to God. Bishop is there, and he's going to pray for us at some point. And that is why, as a person, when I preside at meetings, generally, I don't encourage opening prayer and closing prayer, because I've not seen the effect of prayers on none of us. As we are even doing the prayer, people are planning evil. So it's better that people should do their prayers their different ways so that we face the business of how we manage ourselves on this planet where God has planted all of us. So on this note, once again, I want to thank the author and Times, Premium Times, that for my former ex-friend. I thank all of you. It's my pleasure to be here. I think we should just wait and listen to Bishop himself to come and do an expose of the book. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. You can see the effect of the loaded 3 weeks of studies in mass comm right here. Thank you very much. We're indeed grateful. At the moment, we shall invite our most distinguished, revered Bishop Kuka. Before then, let me also quickly recognize some of our other friends who have joined us. Brigadier General Sani Usman Kashika, they wrote retired here, but I wouldn't say so. MNI, former Director, Army Public Relations. Thank you very much for your presence here. Thank you. I don't want to say you are retired because I know you are not tired. You're not. Thank you very much. He's also the National Publicity Secretary of the Alumni Association of the Nigerian Institute. Thank you. Also have my friend Yusuf Olanionu is here. Yusuf, I think I cited you. Where are thou? Okay, all right. Thank you. Oloriwe Rahim Adedoyin from The Guardian via Kwara State, Ilorin. Oloriwe, thank you. Thank you for honoring us with your presence here this morning. I'm so very happy to have with us the founder of Al Mustafiya Society of Nigeria, Dr. Maisuna Yahya. Thank you. Where are you, please? Okay, let me remove my glasses so I can see very well. We're also happy that Mr. Dr. Fabian Benjamin, who is the Director of Media at the Joint Admissions and Matriculations Board, JAM, is here to represent Professor Ishaq Oloyede. Dr. Fabian Benjamin, please. Thank you. Thank you. I was almost going to look out for a white person. Fabian Benjamin. May I also specially recognize Mr. Adebayo Said of Said Engineering Services Limited. Thank you also for your presence here today. A prominent businessman, Kayode Ramos, is here with us. Mr. Kayode Ramos, please. Sir? Oh, wonderful. That's good. Since you're a prominent businessman, when we start making the presentation, we'll come that way so that we come take as many copies as possible to relearn the art of letter writing. The Vice Chancellor of the University of Ilorin, Professor Wahab Olasupo Egbewole, is represented by Professor Abdurrashid Adeoye. Professor Adeoye, please. Oh, thank you very much. We're indeed honored by your presence. May I also recognize one of our own, the co-founder, former managing director, Independent Communications Limited, publishers of the News, PM News, and Temple, former managing director, News Agency of Nigeria, now director of communications for the Tinubu Shetima presidential campaign, Mr. Bayo Ononuga. Mr. Bayo Ononuga, please. No, that place is not it now. There is a seat out here. Please, can we usher my former editor up this way? When he was editor of the African Concord, was there with Dapsy. I was his deputy. So please bring my editor forward. We still recognize our seniors in this business. Please, thank you. Ushers, please do that. Mr. Bayo Nanuga, please. Thank you for your presence too, Mr. Azu Shekwene. Thank you. In fact, I don't understand these glasses anymore. When I put them on, I don't see well. When I remove them, I see very well. There must be a problem. It must be probed, either by EFCC or ICPC. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, most distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. We are very thankful for your presence. We keep recognizing our friends as they join us. At this point, permit me to now invite for a peek into the publication, into the mind of a most unusual letter writer, Olusegun Obasanjo. Let's welcome his very good friend and our very good friend and mentor, Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka.
Very simple. The reason why your glasses are playing up, nothing is wrong with them. They're just getting old, that's all. They're ashamed of it. Pardon me, I may sound a bit incoherent, but actually I finished writing this review between Frankfurt and here. At the same time, trying to prepare for a lecture I had to deliver for OPS Ekwesili and her people upon arrival. Right now, somebody is in Kano reading a paper I'm supposed to have delivered. I excused myself and they accepted, but shortly after that, I was told I should still write a paper. So, both the paper in Kano and this review were written between Frankfurt and here. So, even up till this morning, I still was writing this review. So, please, I crave your indulgence. Opening this book, Mojit starts with a fallacy because the first line in the preface says, the idea of this book came to me by accident. That is the first fallacy. Because after reading the book, I'm convinced and of the view that this book is nothing short of an inspiration. But of course, the author is not alone in this frame of mind because all of us, including myself, when we don't want to ascribe what has happened to God, we say it's an accident, it is a chance, it is happenstance, it is luck, it is providence, serendipity, coincidence, fortune, or fate. The author, therefore, did not find himself in Abeokuta on January 15, 2014 by accident. The book, soon to be in your hands, is a masterful piece of ingenuity, which has opened a completely different dimension in the onion-like life of history of one of the nations, Africa's and the world's most controversial, provocative, argumentative, insightful, inscrutable, enigmatic, Byzantine, and inspiring individuals beyond the shores of Nigeria and Africa. Often, some individuals turn certain time-tested truths into fallacies. For example, the subject of this book proves that you can actually eat your cake and have it. President Obasanjo, General, President, Chief, Aremu, Okikiola, Matthew, Olusegun, Obasanjo's mind is a complex cobweb. A general of the Nigerian army, an officer and a gentleman, though that is debatable, rising to the foot of the hill, to the peak, a very illustrious military career, with a record that obviously seems to have been unblemished. He went on from being a military head of state to being a two-time elected president, and then, of course, to being cashiered from the military. From my understanding, if you're cashiered from the military, it means your records have been wiped clean. At best, a tabula rasa. But then he resurfaced prison, and of course, attained a resurrection, subsequently an ascension to the highest office in the land. It is rather curious that no one has yet, to the best of my knowledge, written a biography of Obasanjo. My friend Dipo was telling me that some white man who has really never seen Obasanjo wrote his biography. The man has made such a project. Obasanjo himself, by his life, has made such a project redundant. And this is because he doesn't seem to trust anyone to tell his story. And he's developed almost an obsession with getting his word out purely and simply on his own terms. His state of mental discipline and alertness is incredible and almost impossible to decipher. His mind is incisive, distrusting, suspecting, sharp, rapier-like, and he writes and ensures that he is the main deal in the script of his own drama. The Gospels, according to Matthew, with an A for Aremu, have covered all aspects of his childhood and adult life. He has covered almost any and everything that he has been involved in. Military career, civil war, prison life, presidencies, literally everything and anything that has come under his watch. In trying to review this enigma, therefore, when, where, and how does one start? Is it his life as a soldier, a farmer, a former military head of state, then a president, an international and much sought after negotiator, a squash player, a footballer who even at the age of 80 insists that he must score a goal? So where does one really start? Perhaps I will have to fall back on something I have referred to. It's an interview that his late wife, Stella Obasanjo, granted to State House journalists. One of the things the journalist asked Stella, said, how do you rate your husband in terms of his performance? Stella said, as what? He said, just give us an assessment. He said, look, if you want me to assess my husband as the president of Nigeria, I will score him 80, 90%. You may not agree with me, but I live with him and I know how this works. But to score him as a father, probably I'll give him between 50 and 60%. But as a husband, between 30 and 40%. So, therefore, in reviewing this book, it's a complex assignment. But amidst all of this enters the Letterman. Inside the secret letters of former President Olusegun Obasanjo. A real insight into an aspect of the general's life that is largely unseen, unknown, and untouched by a majority. And I think that is how things were until Ojit decided to take this holy journey. The Letterman as a book speaks to the idea of a man who elevated letter writing to an art in the School of Governors. Remember, as a young, probably about 12 or 13, my cousin insisted that he had seen a girl that he wanted me to befriend. I didn't start thinking of the seminary then. I looked at the girl, she really was not that beautiful. But my cousin still kept insisting and trying to link us up. And we weren't making much progress. So one day he came to me and said, look, this girl is complaining that you are showing no interest. I said, well, tell her to write me. And then he came back to me to say, he told her that to say you should write a letter if you really are serious about this friendship. And then he told me, he said, I spoke to her. And she said to me, go and tell him, if he written me, I will written him too. So, letter writing as a point has been well made. It's an art. There's a newspaper library in London where many people who are really serious in the journalism will tell you that if you went to a place like when I was doing my research, this is off my review. But when I was doing my research in the School of Oriental and African Studies, I went to the newspaper library in London. And what was fascinating for me, there was a newspaper in northern Nigeria called the Nigerian Citizen. And if you want to know what was happening in Kaduna, for example, in 1965, in 1960, in 1961, all you need to do is you go to the letters page, and you will see where the kind of things that people were angry about, whether it's lack of water or insecurity and so on. But to come back to the point, Obasanjo has an elevated letter writing, to an art in governance. The author reminds us that he saw the letters, first letters written to Obasanjo, his mother, father, siblings, and then of course there's a letter which Yabo wrote on the 28th of January 1977. And I checked Yabo's birthday. It meant she was 10 years when she wrote the letter. So it couldn't be a serious letter. It would be a letter probably begging her father for money. But the book is made up of 25 selected letters covering a range of subjects. And all the letters speak to very important time-defining moments. For the average reader, starting with my humble self, many of us, and when Bojid called me and spoke about this letter writing business, my mind just went back to Yaradua. Some of us will push back and remember Obasanjo. But I think for majority of us, it's about Buhari, letter to Buhari, letter to Jonathan, letter to Yaradua, and so on. And I remember I kept trying to prod Mojid, but he was too polite to tell me that he actually had covered far more than what I was talking about. Chiwemeka Anyogu, of course, in his preface, makes the point that letter writing has been with us from Cicero to St. Paul, among many others. But the letters from Obasanjo's, these letters come from Obasanjo's head, not his heart. And I say so because, one, he doesn't suffer fools gladly. And two, there's very little affection. And this is largely because, as I said, the letters were written, and as I will be explaining to you in my review, there's a lot of boxing. And Obasanjo boxed with bare knuckles in terms of his communication over things he felt very strongly about. First, the president's abiding passion, and the letters demonstrate there is a streak in the letters. You see his abiding passion and patriotic commitment to the principles and belief of the professionalism of the military, even at what I would call a middle level role in his life as a soldier. And this is marked by a rare show of courage, which we see. And for me, this courage is a bit strange because, as you will see, there is a stubborn streak in the quality of the letters and even the people that he addresses. And I'm saying to myself as I'm reading these letters, has the military changed? Was the military just some casual classroom in the 60s? Because how could Obasanjo write all these kind of things and get away with them? A lot of the letters that he writes, when he took over from the Black Scorpion command of the 10th Marine Commando, and found himself in Port Harcourt. Now, in his letter of 23rd of June, 1969, Colonel Obasanjo stated that here is a brigadier who is in Lagos, Brigadier Epo, and he decided to enlist to read law in 1969. Somehow Obasanjo got wind of it. Obasanjo is a colonel. Epo is a brigadier. And Obasanjo writes him a letter. Among other things, he says, the impression in the minds of many officers, he said to Epo, is that reading law by a senior military officer amounts to a carefree attitude. In peacetime, one would not mind much, but now it affects the image of the army and all soldiers and yours in particular. Page 22. Now, it is also very interesting because I can't imagine a junior officer talking like this to a senior officer. But guess what? General Epo, an incredible gentleman, responds to Obasanjo almost like he's answering a query. And he says, and I quote, "Believe me when I say I am not at all offended by the views you express. I accept them, and I hope my explanation will satisfy you and other officers who apparently must have expressed their concerns to you. For those of us in the rear, as you are probably aware, there are a few hours of the day absolutely at our disposal. So long as I'm in Lagos, and I will, and I command fairly good health, I will continue with my reading, and any officer or individual who does not like it, please himself, not go to hell. They please himself. There is evidence that Colonel Obasanjo was clear in his mind about the need, what needed to be done to end the war. And if you read the letters, an incredible sense of perception about what military tactics needed to be employed. I mean, you read the letters and you think, the guys who were in Lagos, what were they thinking? Because he then went on, he proceeded to write to officers, he got news. For example, news got to the ears of Brigadier Hassan Usman Kassina, who was then the chief of army staff, that some transfers had been made. It was unlikely that some of the officers, maybe they went and reported the matter. The names of the officers are not given. And I think this was something that the chief of army staff maybe responded to. Got to Obasanjo. But in response, because Lieutenant Colonel James Oluloye was GOC1, that was a subordinate to Obasanjo. And apparently he mentioned that the transfers Obasanjo had undertaken were probably causing a bit of rumpus. Obasanjo fires a letter to his chief of staff, dated 17 July 1969. And he said, among other things, with a brutal show of bravado and near insolence, quote, he said, if I carry out a reorganization within the division and the best interest of the division and the army, and the reorganization cannot be supported by you because of the interest of one officer out of 6 who are affected, then the future of the army and the nation is gloomy. End of quote. It is clear from the letters that Colonel Obasanjo had an abiding sense of patriotism, because from the author, he also reminds us that from his first encounter with officers and men of the battlefront, Obasanjo got the impression that the troops under his command were tired. Many of them were unmotivated, poorly equipped. He said there were soldiers who had even taken to self-mutilation so that they could be evacuated from the war front. So a lot of these all come together, and Obasanjo is committed to the fact that we cannot win a war with an army that is not properly inspired. And for me, his decision to sacrifice both his career and even, if I may say, his life and so on, and to confront those in authority, suggests that when people say to us, oh, you're speaking truth to power, it's not until you've read some of these letters that are here. Now, at a point, 3 weeks after Obasanjo was posted to Port Harcourt, he wrote a letter. He said he went round all the formations under his care. Then he wrote a letter to the Commander-in-Chief, General Gowon. And he said, in a letter dated 17 July 1969, captured, he said, and he only said in the letter, he said, from Obasanjo, from Colonel Obasanjo. Even the way he addresses the Commander-in-Chief. And then he says, and I quote, as for weapons and ammunition, let us get them wherever we can provide it, and if it will not cost us our sovereignty. That is a genius, somebody way down, writing to the Commander-in-Chief. Because there were rumors then, and Awolowo makes the point that the war was fought, they didn't have to find money, borrow money or something to that effect. But I just said, this is absolute nonsense. Because he said 3 months from the time of the decision is taken. That is 3 months after this conversation, Obasanjo is writing this letter. He said 3 months from the time a decision is taken is a long time. There is no reason why half of the men required should not have been trained and fully equipped. I will make bold to predict that the end of the war can be in 3 months. This is July 1969. Now, of course, all of us who are familiar with how the war ended can appreciate what he's saying. He was concerned about the claim that there was no money. And so again, in July 28, he wrote another letter. It is rather disheartening that all of us in uniform, this is the letter now. This letter that he's reading from is a letter addressed to General Gowon, 28th of May 1969. Because after writing the first letter, it seemed that he was summoned to Lagos. He goes to Lagos, he's probably scolded, reprimanded, he comes back with a bit of anger, and then he now writes to General Gowon. He says, quote, it is rather disheartening that all of us in uniform seem not to be able to understand the ramifications of the present civil war. Commander-in-Chief doesn't seem to understand what is going on in the civil war. And Obasanjo says, I wrote to you in all seriousness and conscious of my duties and loyalty to you and country. I was torn at the apparent lack of understanding and the general lack of seriousness in our approach to our problems. All the talk that we have not borrowed money yet to finance the war will not impress anybody if we fail to achieve our objective, namely to win the war. It will be disastrous to save the economy and lose the war. We seem to be confused in our mission and our aim. We give the impression of groping in the dark and wandering aimlessly and purposelessly. I am sure we can do with a sense of mission and a sense of direction. The country needs to be woken up from the slumber and apparent complacency. Obasanjo is in Port Harcourt, telling the people in Lagos, you are sleeping. And like I said, it doesn't seem to, from the records, we don't know how the authorities reacted. But it perhaps speaks to the decency of the person like that. I don't know. But for me, it's shocking that Obasanjo will say this kind of things. And I guess maybe his superiors knew a thing or two. Either his efficiency, they couldn't doubt his patriotism. Sometimes people in authority look at you and they know, they may not be happy with the things you say, but they know that the things you're saying from your heart. And I think this is probably what comes to. So I do not know what Obasanjo put in the one's tea. Because how could an ordinary colonel seize the job of a commander-in-chief, the chief of army staff, the quartermaster general in one fell swoop and still get away with it? How did Colonel Obasanjo get away with this raw bravado and defiance of military authority? Strange as it may sound, he presented a war plan, which his superiors debated and didn't agree with. But Obasanjo still stuck to his war plan. The rest, of course, and the result is what we saw. Because he says in July, you give me what we need, we'll end the war. The war ends, as you know, barely 6 months later. If you read some of the correspondences, he arrives Port Harcourt. Commander Diek Tespif, 24 years old is the governor. But you can see from the correspondence, there are debates. Obasanjo makes the point about protocol. I'm senior to you, you will be governor, but I mean, they are fascinating things, to read. But one of the things that happened was somehow the military is trying to manage public relations. So somebody came up with an idea that they should do a calendar of themselves. You know calendar now, where you pay, so and so. It's the first, like one calendar I saw of chief people. They will put down your achievement, your cooker, first man from his town to become a senator, whatever. But in this particular case, it was in a restaurant here in Abuja. One man what he had done for his community was that he was the first chief man to marry a white woman. That was his first accomplishment. Sorry, please, don't eat into my time. But in his letters to governor, in his letters to get to speak, he doesn't even address the things you see in the letter. He addresses it as dear Alfred, despite the fact that the man is governor. But so the debate about this calendar emerges, and Olusegun, who was his deputy, now says to him, look, okay, this is what these people are saying, that we should do calendar. Hear what Obasanjo responded. He said, I am not cut out for cheap popularity. This is a quotation. Or a first saving, or first showing. Not cut out for cheap popularity or first showing. My face is ugly anyway, and nobody would like to see it, even if I'm willing to show it. Page 64 of the book. So Obasanjo had written other books. I'm quite lucky because when he came out of prison, he published 2 books. One was This Animal Called Man, which I was invited as a reviewer. The second one was the story of outstanding women in the Bible, showing very clearly. And I think one of the fascinating things about Obasanjo is a lot of people doubt the depth of his religiosity. But when you read the letters, he didn't come late to the faith. You can see a deep and abiding faith, especially when you read some of the material that he wrote from prison. But I make 2 comments. One is my personal experience with Obasanjo on May 29, 1999. No, May 30th, I think. That was after the swearing-in ceremony. Khan organized some kind of a Thanksgiving event, and the news story asked me to go with him. So I was there. And this was at a time that Pastor, what's his name? Pastor, tell me, you know him now, Pastor, what's his name? Who was Obasanjo running mate? 20, Bakare, Pastor Tunde Bakare. Pastor Tunde Bakare, that was not, this is But that prophecy of being number 16 was not the first false prophecy he had given. But then this prophecy was, he had prophesied in after Obasanjo won the election, that Obasanjo will die before the swearing in. So when we got to the hall, everybody spoke, they prayed, then Obasanjo, it was his turn to say a few things. Obasanjo was, I remember one of the things he said, literally, he was like, listen, you guys don't get your act together. I'm telling you, like, I'm going to ordain my own priest, so be careful. I'll find my own prophets, But you can see that if you fast forward to what happened in Plateau, the incident of him going to Plateau, and he's having this audience, crises are taking place in Plateau, killings are taking place. And the first was maybe, I think, Christians killed Muslims. I don't like to use the expression, but let me just say it as it was. Then this time now it's Muslims who kill Christians. Obasanjo goes there, and he's not very happy, and so on. And the Christian community thinks that he's not being sympathetic, and he's making moral exhortation. So anyway, Obasanjo is upset. When Obasanjo is upset, you know the consequences. So he looks at the chairman of CAN and says, listen, and the guy says, look, President of CAN, he says, calm my foot. I'm sure many of you remember. But Obasanjo takes no prisoners when it comes to relationship, whether they're spiritual or whatever. He had his own pastor, whom he fired. I wasn't sure whether it was because of prophecy, but I think Obasanjo was another idea. So Obasanjo comes across as somebody who operates literally, he sets the rules and sets the conclusion. But the next and perhaps very important part of this conversation in the collection is his engagement with South Africa under the Eminent Persons Group. It was a seven-man body. And it was fascinating because Obasanjo is taking on two animals, Margaret Thatcher and Big Brother. And it's about can we begin a process of figuring out how apartheid will end? But Obasanjo has the instincts of a cat because he can see very clearly from the conversation that both Margaret Thatcher and Big Brother are buying time. And so the first few letters that he writes are signed by Malcolm Fraser, the former Prime Minister of Australia, and himself. Both of them signed the letters. But after they gain altitude and they enter into a bomb, at some point, there is a break in the communication because Obasanjo is now signing the letters himself. The first few letters are very polite, exploratory, and conciliatory. But somehow things don't go very well. And if you read the letters, you will see, again, Moji does an extraordinarily good work. And I think boss mentioned that one. What is very fascinating in the letters is his ability to walk through history. Moji shows very clearly in the book that not only does he understand the mind of Obasanjo, but he also contextualizes the analysis because he takes you back to the previous books that Obasanjo has written and gives you a greater background detail and situates a lot of the issues. But part of the conversation in South Africa was that, and if you remember the foreign minister of South Africa, Mr. Clark, sorry, not I say Mr. Clark, Botha, he was always saying his position was, listen, why are you Africans elsewhere complaining? Look, he says to the black people in South Africa, stop complaining. Your brothers, your cousins outside have a worse life than your own. Of course, unfortunately, Nigerians have justified that because in the end of apartheid, we shamelessly treat South Africa as the place of favorite destination. And Hunis, one of the ministers, on the 11th of June, 1986, writes a letter to Obasanjo because this man is fed up with Obasanjo's seeming overconfidence and the challenges he's making. And then he writes a letter and he says to Obasanjo, and I quote, you yourself were a leader of Nigeria, which position you did hold without election. That is as a good man. In violent and turbulent time, I would have thought that you would be more careful in handling issues of morality and democracy, page 225. Now, you would see that Obasanjo saw through the shenanigans that both Margaret Thatcher and Botha were playing. And he also sensed that Mrs. Thatcher was hanging a handbag of sanctions on the fact that sanctions don't work. That's the right-wing attitude, which is that, capitalists tell you that poor people, get yourself up by your bootstrap. You're not working hard, that's why you are poor. Okay, but people say you don't even look at the man to see he has slow boots. But the argument always is blaming the victim. So Obasanjo then writes to Margaret Thatcher and says, listen, you are telling us that sanctions are not going to work. Why did you work so hard, assiduously, to enforce sanctions in Afghanistan, in Poland, and in Argentina? If they work there, they must also be able to work. And then, of course, Margaret Thatcher then writes a letter. He accuses her by 1986. The tone has changed because Obasanjo realizes that, look, it's like a man who says, I'm going to divorce my wife, but suddenly realizes, oh, no, let me have a second thought. But let's renegotiate this. And you'll see from the correspondence, because the tone begins to come down when he realizes by 1986 that something is happening somewhere. Because he accuses Margaret Thatcher in a letter dated July 16, 1986, of delaying tactics, unyielding support for the South African government and his apartheid policy, as we see on page 232. He is brutally frank in telling Margaret Thatcher to her face, you are a supporter of Botha and apartheid. And then, of course, Margaret Thatcher now writes a letter to Obasanjo saying, look, you know the Afrikaner, like Hausa man will say, you know these Igbo people. Igbo man will say, you know these Hausa people. Hausa people will say, you know these Yoruba people. So, Margaret Thatcher says to Obasanjo, you know these Afrikaners, how they are, and the lager mentality that they have. Obasanjo then writes Margaret Thatcher, and he says, quote, my own understanding of the Afrikaner, both from history and from recent current events, is that the Afrikaner is tough, tribalistic, stubborn, ruthless, oppressive, seemingly inflexible, but he has never committed suicide. He has only changed under pressure, and the more pressure, the greater the possibility of us having changed. Page 232. Now, what is very interesting is that by 1986, Obasanjo departs from protocol. All his letters were addressed to Margaret Thatcher as Right Honorable Margaret Thatcher, Prime Minister. That's how he addresses all the letters. But by this letter, Obasanjo begins to burn his bridges because he realizes the bridges are going nowhere. And so he simply addresses her on page 235 as Dear Margaret. Because he's fed up. Maybe it's a term of affection, but he now realizes, okay, you're Prime Minister, you're not quite honorable, but let's have a conversation. And he says on page 238, in one of the letters, he says, I must tell you that many people around the world view your continued opposition to sanctions as founded on instinct, not logic, and as displaying a misguided tribal loyalty and a myopic political vision. Those who seek to minimize sanctions and their effect will have blood of thousands, if not millions of innocents in their hands and on their consciences. My heart will be heavy, but my hands will be clean. Will yours? That's what he asked Margaret Thatcher. Now, later on, when Obasanjo realizes, as I said, maybe by late 1988, Mandela is going to turn 70 very soon. And Obasanjo is aware of that. Perhaps using his contacts, he's also aware that certain things are happening. And so he embarks on a charm offensive. Because now, the way he talks to Margaret Thatcher is completely different. Because I think maybe somehow he's realized that they're not going to get anywhere without this woman. So in his letter to Margaret Thatcher, which is reproduced on page 238, he says to her, I had the privilege of interacting with you. Although it cannot be said to share in totality a commonality of views and solutions to the problems of South Africa. Yet, one cannot but respect your apparent sincerity and forthrightness. I hope you will bring these qualities of yours to bear on the issue of Mandela's release, as I know you have done on other occasions, and will use the immense influence at your disposal as a respected leader of one of the greatest nations of the free in capital, free world to influence Mr. Botha. It is important to note here that General Obasanjo displayed the most strategic instincts that are important for negotiation. He displayed calculative instincts of a good negotiator, knowing the card to play and when to play it. When he sensed, using his other outlets, that something was going to happen and that humility was a better virtue than strength, he had to beat back. Staying at the door was more important than knocking or trying to push the door by force. And Mrs. Thatcher must have read this letter and smiled. The relationship between, that's how we end that conversation, and I try to round up. The relationship between President Jimmy Carter and Obasanjo is quite a fascinating relationship. But it also tells you what happens. And I think these are things that Nigerians need to learn. Because when two people find themselves at different ends of the, whether it's the political pole, you went to school together. And I think the challenge to the Nigerian political elite is that when you find that a classmate of yours is in Sokoto and you are in Zamfara, or you are in Uyo, or you are in Lagos and so on, there's certain things that ought to come to the table. Now, when you read the correspondence between Jimmy Carter and Obasanjo, you can see an ideological convergence. Both of them have a sense of, Obasanjo maybe drew inspiration from Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, even at the age of 90, told me he was still teaching Sunday school. Obasanjo probably learned teaching Sunday school from. But both of them, I think they are Baptists. But you can see from their conversation that they go in a particular direction and the relationship is good. But when you touch Africa, Obasanjo will fight. So on the issue of Angola, something that happened in Angola, and Obasanjo fired one of the letters in which he accused Jimmy Carter of being overbearing, patronizing, and accuses America of arm twisting, which we will not accept. Now, in all, this book is like no other. Mojit secured an entry visa into the intricate garden that makes up the sophisticated, intricate, Dardanian mind of General Obasanjo, and in doing so, managed to steal enough from this garden. And he has served us what I call a rich, delicate, delicious salad of anecdotes, military history, diplomacy, friendship, and leadership. In his masterpiece, War and Peace, widely considered the greatest novel ever written, Tolstoy advanced the view that historians err in presuming that history is shaped by the plans and ideas of great men, whether generals or political leaders or intellectuals like themselves, and that its direction is determined by dramatic moments leading to major decisions. Instead, he says, history is made of the sum total of an infinite number of small decisions taken by ordinary people whose actions are too unremarkable to be documented. It's not a stretch to say that General Obasanjo is a great man. Even many detractors agree to this. You remember the story, even the man who shines the shoes of the general who wins the war has made a contribution. There's a joke, it's not a joke, it's something, the title is, but for a nail. It talks about how the general lost a war because of a nail. The nail was in the shoe of the horse he was riding. The nail came off, the shoe collapsed, couldn't fight the war. So it speaks to the fact that each and every one of us has a contribution to make. It is not a stretch to say that General Obasanjo is a great man. And the story of his life would seem to be like Tolstoy's views, until you realize that Obasanjo is a walking contradiction. The most ordinary and the most extraordinary of men, who can dine with presidents, but still call out and beat up somebody in Kogi. Remember what happened? President Obasanjo is president of Nigeria. Suddenly he sees a policeman beating somebody in Kogi, one of his visits to Kogi, and literally comes down from the podium, calls the big man, and flogs the policeman for beating this poor man. But until you realize that he's an extraordinary human being, as Shakespeare said famously, be not afraid of greatness. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, others have greatness trust in them. President, Chief, Aremu, Okikiola, Matthew, Olusegun alone acquits all three. He was born with great talents and abilities. He has leveraged these to achieve great things and greatness, and has also had greatness thrust upon him by circumstances, by man and God. But Obasanjo is not a man who does anything in-house. The volume of his letters to the most senior officers who served in his time should testify to this. Obasanjo wrote to almost all senior military officers, especially those of the Southwest. He wrote to Murtala, he wrote to quite a lot. If we were to go through all of these letters and analyze them, we'll write another book. But President Obasanjo is assured of a very special place in the history of Nigeria, the history of Africa, and indeed the history of the world. He may have a controversial record here at home, but for him, you can say, boy, howdy. They don't make them like this anymore. I think God made him with a special mold, definitely, and he has cooperated with the grace of God. I do not know whether God broke the mold or preserved it, but in many years, it will be hard to get any man in Nigeria wear the size of his shoes, to have and to command such overarching presence. His record keeping will be a thing of envy to the CIA, the FBI, to Mossad, to MI5, to KGB, to make them grin with envy. I doubt that anyone living in living memory has ever had this sense of record keeping. We thank Mojib for serving us such a delicious tea. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the standing ovation for Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka. We are indeed grateful for the 12 of us. Thank you, and thank you, and thank you. You know, for a publication such as this, after hearing from Bishop Kuka, we also have what we call an addendum. Another peek at the publication, The Letterman, by Musikilu Mojid. It's another view of the publication. We shall share that in a moment when we invite the representative of the immediate past governor of the state, Dr. John Kayode Fayemi, to also lend some insight into this publication. It's a brief one. It's an unusual perspective that you're also willing to share with us this afternoon. So I'll crave your indulgence. Meanwhile, let me recognize the presence of the former chairman of the EFCC. There have been quite a number of former chairmen of the EFCC. Okay, this is Madam Ibrahim Magu. Thank you very much. You're in the audience. Please, where are you, sir? Thank you. Is he here? Oh, okay. All right. May I also specially recognize the presence of the Director General of the Nigeria Governors Forum, Mr. A.B. Okauru. Thank you also for your presence here. Thank you. Alhaji Abubakar Jibia, Executive Director at the Nigeria Governors Forum. We thank you very much. The Chief Executive Officer of Sky Limit Media Group and former Deputy President, Nigeria Guild of Editors, Sulaiman Ubagaya. Thank you. The General Secretary, Nigeria Guild of Editors, Yobusa Wugiane. Thank you very much. The Minister Counselor for Press and Public Affairs of the Embassy of Liberia in Abuja, Nat Beje. We thank you very much. Except that some of your citizens play football for the US these days. Special Advisor, Media and Publicity to the Speaker, Mr. Lanre Lasisi. We thank you. Mr. Tunde Fabi is here as well. So is Mr. Hassan Abdullahi. We're indeed thankful that you could make it over to join us in welcoming this publication. The CEO of Dairy Hills Limited, Kelvin Emmanuel, we thank you also for your presence. I also wish to, it's a long list of my colleagues in the media, print and electronic, and perhaps as well online. our friends from Arise, from Channels, from Radio Nigeria, from Daily Trust, from Voice of Nigeria, from Blueprint, from TVC News, from News Diary Online, from This Day, from FRCN, from Leadership, from AIT, Pilot Newspaper, Vanguard Newspaper, Daily Trust, and all and all and all. We thank you all very much for your presence here. It's our show, so you have come to lend support to one of your own. May I now invite Mr. A.B. Okauru, representing, didn't know you were close by, representing His Excellency John Kayode Fayemi. Please. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to stand on existing protocol. I got this about an hour ago from my former chairman, Governor Fayemi. I think he got an advance copy of this book just before he left for Brazil a couple of days ago, and read this through from Abuja, according to him, to Sao Paulo. And he wants me to read this. It's titled Olusegun Obasanjo, Bearing Witness to History. At the time I gave my word to be present at the public presentation of the Letterman on December 1st, 2022, exactly 2 months ago, little did I know that my new responsibilities as head of the Forum of Governors in Africa will take me all the way to Sao Paulo, Brazil. I'm happy though that I was able to lay my hands on an advanced copy of the Letterman, and it was a beautiful companion all the way from Abuja to Sao Paulo. Moji has done us a huge favor by putting these letters together in a single volume with excellent annotations. To many of us, some of these letters are not new. They were indeed the subject of dinner table discourse in many homes when they were officially released or surreptitiously leaked. At the time, reactions ranged from those who saw them as Baba's supposed penchant for self-glorification to those who regarded them as his obsessive predilection for painting his successors black, to very rare commendation for speaking true to power and approximating the feelings of the people in periods of stress and anguish as the voice of the voiceless. Read together with other letters seen for the first time in this volume, one is bound to have a renewed sense of respect and admiration for our past president, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo. For me, if one is in any doubt, these letters written over a period of 60 years demonstrate a high level of remarkable consistency of thought and action. Even when you disagree with the logic of his argument in his letters, you cannot doubt the courage of his conviction. Moji was also able to demonstrate, undoubtedly, through this published volume, that Chief Olusegun Obasanjo intellect, his attention to detail, and tireless capacity for record keeping, his native intelligence, his transparency and accountability, his generosity of spirit, which runs contrary to the widespread impression of Obasanjo as a stingy man who won't give shishi. His religious piety, his ability to show appreciation as a person who never forgets a favor nor forgive a slight, his unquestioning patriotism and loyalty to Nigeria, and his irrepressible Pan-Africanist inclinations. One is also attuned, often by the speed with which he churns out these letters. But then, maybe one should not be surprised. After all, I once traveled, that's Governor Fayemi, not me. After all, I once traveled from Addis Ababa to Lagos on an Ethiopian airline flight, sitting next to him. Baba wrote all through the 4.5-hour flight, non-stop. And he went on to deliver the paper he wrote in Lagos same evening. What is clear from the language of the early letters to the most recent ones is that they are unquestionably Babas. These are not letters written by aides, with him only appending his signature. They are correspondences that carry Baba's person, whether written in the war front in the 60s or as a retired president in 2020. The language, proverbs, self-deprecating humor, outright abuse of the subject, wisecracks and jokes, and we're all unmistakably Babas. In the last few months, I've had cause to ask myself, how does he do it? I encountered Baba in Oslo, New York, Nairobi, London, Addis Ababa, Abuja, Dubai, not having fun, but always working in the service of humanity. The latest being the remarkable feat he accomplished with the Ethiopian peace settlement between the Tigrayan rebels and the Ethiopian state. Many of us thought it was a futile effort when he started, but for Baba, once you put his mind to something, he gives it his best shot. His self-confidence, abiding faith in God, pulls him through against all odds. It is no exaggeration to venture to suggest that Baba has achieved more for our foreign policy profile as a non-state actor in the last decade. What Moji also achieved with this publication without necessarily meaning to do so is the manner he surreptitiously exposed Baba's softer side through insightful revelations in some of the letters, especially how his prison years brought him closer to God to the point of rescuing many offenders who would have been worse off in prison, or expressing heartfelt condolences to the widow of the man who threw him into jail, Elijah Miriam Abacha, at a time when the late Stormy Petrel, Gani Fayemi, roared on the BBC that the hottest parts of hell should be reserved for the late maximum ruler. As our country proceeds in search of a new leader, there's a lot of leadership lessons to glean from Baba Obasanjo's remarkable life, from his success and all through his foibles. While many of us may not appreciate the words of Obasanjo now, just the way Winston Churchill was rejected at the polls in the aftermath of his World War II victory, only for him to be re-elected prime minister later and crowned man of the century by the BBC, there is no doubt that history and posterity will be kind to Chief Olusegun Obasanjo. Thank you, Moji, for bearing witness to history. Thank you for bringing out the essence of letter writing as a window to the world of Olusegun Obasanjo. Kayode Fayemi. Well, I want to add Dr. Kayode Fayemi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, immediate past Governor, Ekiti State, for the goodwill message and the unusual insight into the essence of the man, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo. The story of the Letterman began with a publication by the Premium Times of an exclusive letter written by Chief Olusegun Obasanjo to Dr. Goodluck Abele Jonathan as sitting president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He graciously accepted to be the special guest of honor at this event. But again, because he gets to be invited to quite a number of international engagements, he's unable to be here with us. He has his former Minister of Aviation and former Corps Marshal of the Federal Road Safety Corps to represent him. We've decided, because the representative has some other businesses to attend to about now, to adjust the program slightly before we have the conversation with the author, and also invite a book presenter to also present the publication. to invite Chief Osita Chidoka, representing our special guest of honor, to make his remarks. Please, let's put our hands together as we welcome him. Thank you.
Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. On application, my Lord Bishop Bukuyo. I stand here to speak on behalf of former President Goodluck Jonathan, who was in just is on his way back from Bamako and can't make it here today. Before I read his brief remarks, I want to also point out that when he asked me to represent him, he said, I know he's a Babatu, so if you go there, feel free to amend my remarks. So I said, Mr. President, if I amend your remarks, then I will receive a letter from President Obasanjo. And that's not always a good omen, to receive a letter from President Obasanjo. I recollected him when I heard the story about him not wanting to be on the almanac, on the calendar. I remember sitting with Obasanjo, and his sister came. And Obasanjo said, President Obasanjo said, have you met my sister? I said, no, sir. He said, well, when I was growing up, there were no mirrors in our village. So we didn't have any way to know how we looked. So growing up, I used to see my sister, and people will say, you and Olusegun looks alike. So when I looked at her, I knew I was in trouble. Because seeing her face and thinking that I looked like her, I knew that I was in big trouble. So I knew I had to work hard to make it possible for women to forgo how I look and deal with me as Olusegun. One of the things he always likes to say, which puts me in a quandary, whenever I argue with him, he will say, Osita, you know I'm not as stupid as I look. And I wouldn't know what to say, whether to agree that he looks stupid or that he's not as stupid as he looks. So I always find a way to just murmur something and move along. So from the letters we've read today, we've seen that Obasanjo is not as stupid as he looks. And that what he has been doing has come from a very long time and long history of his activities. I now want to read the comments of President Goodluck Jonathan, who is a recipient of a letter from Obasanjo. And like I said, the letter is always a foreboding of bad omen. But he has taken it in his stride, and he has learned the capacity and the characteristics of President Obasanjo. And I quote President Goodluck now. He says, I am pleased to be part of this book presentation event. I would have loved to attend the program in person as the special guest of honor, because the book is about a personality I respect and admire so much. He is like a father figure to me. Unfortunately, I had to travel out of the country for an international engagement. I thank Musikilu Mujid, a highly respected editor, for the initiative of writing such a good book out of significant correspondences of a prominent political figure. The Letterman is no ordinary book. It is a biography made out of the numerous letters of former President Chief Olusegun Obasanjo. What the author has produced is a timeless historical document that contains an analysis of very key epistolary engagements on governance, military, religion, diplomacy, and even sports from the perspectives of Chief Obasanjo. The book, The Letterman, has again brought to focus the place of letters in world history and the role it could play in stimulating critical thinking and influencing policy in global geopolitics. Over the ages, there are ample documented instances of epoch-making letters that impacted the course of history and left lessons for future generations. In 1920, A letter to United States Congressman Harry Thomas Bond from his mother, Feb Bond, prompted him to cast the deciding ballot that gave women the right to vote for the first time in America. Similarly, a letter dispatched by a renowned physicist, Albert Einstein, in 1939 to President Franklin D. Roosevelt was what triggered the United States nuclear research program, gave rise to the atomic bomb, and started the atomic age. I want to pause for a minute as the author of the letter is here. Bishop gets a military salute. Okay, so now that Baba has settled down, I will repeat what I said before he entered. And I said I was with Baba one evening when he introduced me to his sister. And he told me that growing up, they didn't have mirrors in their village, so he didn't know how he looked. But that people used to tell him that, yeah, your sister look alike. And after he looked at the sister, he realized he was in trouble. And if this is how he looks, then he has a problem. And that was why he worked very hard to make sure that people don't just see how he looks, but that they listen to what he says. So maybe that's part of the reason why he wrote the letters. And the second one is that Baba used to, whenever I find his trouble or he's arguing with me, he would tell me, Osita, you know I'm not as stupid as I look. And I'm always confused how to answer, whether to agree that he's stupid or that he looks stupid. I always have that confusion. And definitely, like I said, he's not as stupid as he looks. And he always asks me that question in a very difficult moment. So he said that President Jonathan, who I'm representing today, has asked me to read his address because he couldn't make it today. And I had talked about what he wrote here, about your role and the role of letter writing. So I'm on the last page of his message, and I will just start from that last paragraph. That in 1920, a letter to United States Congressman Harry Thomas Bond from his mother, Feb Bond, prompted him to cast the deciding ballot that gave women the right for the first time in America, the right to vote. Similarly, a letter dispatched by renowned physicist Albert Einstein in 1939 to President Franklin D. Roosevelt was what triggered the United States nuclear research program, gave rise to the atomic bomb, and started the atomic age. Back home, we have a former president and a statesman who has an unmatched zest for letter writing, a passion that over the ages has apparently remained one of his key mediums for critical communication and engagements. The author, who is an award-winning investigative journalist, has done a good job of compiling and analyzing Chief Obasanjo's letters to numerous personalities from all walks of life across the world, including diplomats, clergymen, sportsmen, journalists, and political leaders like myself. Finally, I believe that the book will not only make a good read, it will also serve as a document of value for future researchers in many fields, including military tactics, leadership, and nation building. I thank you all. Now, before I leave the stage, and now that Baba is here, I know that some of the discussions here may elicit a letter, and if it doesn't, it will be that I'm expecting him that maybe when I write my own biography, I will also write some of the ones he hadn't written in letters, including how I'm supposed to keep myself fit and the role of young women in making sure that men remain active. And this is primarily because Baba always finds out that our young men of today, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he's playing squash. And at 80, he's struggling to make sure that he beats a 30-year-old man, even in the game of squash. And he doesn't find it funny when he calls at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. and I'll be sleeping. He said, Osita, are you sleeping? I say, you're stupid. You're not supposed to be sleeping. Young men shouldn't be sleeping. And I say, yes, sir, I'm not sleeping, sir. I'm awake now. And he said, open your book. Open that paper you gave me. Go to page 10. Go to paragraph 4. And then start from there. Take notes. Then he will start dictating at 1 a.m. With sleep in my eye, I will start taking notes. When I finish, he will then say, meet me by 6 a.m. with the final copy so I can review it. And then when I get there by 6 a.m., he will say, just give me a few minutes, I will deal with it, and because I'm going to catch a flight now. In fact, jump in the car, we're going to the airport. So before we get to the airport, I will finish with the paper and give you back. And then he will end up again rewriting the same paragraphs, maybe 2 or 3 more lines of paragraphs added to it. And then he gives you the copy and he will say, I say, okay, let me go and retype it and keep it till when you come back. He will say, no, where I'm going to, when we land, they will give you the fax number. Send it by fax. Those days were the days of fax as president. And I will give you a feedback back. He had such humongous capacity for work, which I haven't quite emulated. He has a great capacity for physical fitness, which I'm struggling to keep up with. And then, but he has a greater capacity for picking quarrels, which I have not learned. So, as we begin the process of celebrating Baba while he's still alive, as we begin the process of recording the history of Nigeria and his role in Nigeria, the Letterman is one of the many that will yet come. Because the history of Nigeria cannot be written without a significant portion about the role and activities of President Obasanjo. I always told him before he left office that history will greatly remember him. We will not remember his petty quarrels. We will not remember his abuses to people. But we will remember that he rewrote the balance sheet of Nigeria. That from a debtor nation, he brought our balance sheet clean. We will remember that he configured the idea that corruption is a major issue in Nigeria, and we need institutions to be able to fight corruption. We will remember in Nigeria that when the time comes that our African policy, our decision on how we relate to the rest of Africa was based on his philosophies and ideology, some of which Bishop Booker talked about in the letters to Margaret Thatcher and in the letters to other leaders, about the philosophy of the role of Nigeria in Africa. So I believe firmly that everybody leaving this room must take home the Letterman. And more importantly, those who know him closely should go beyond recounting his letters to narrating their experiences with him, narrating the issues with him, their quarrels with him. And I believe that those who receive letters from him should also do us a great service by writing some replies now, so that in case he may want to have the final word, because he says that after my watch, he still has one more book to give us. Nigeria is under his watch. So when we get that last book, I believe that those who he mentioned in various books and letters should be able to write him some form of rebuttal to enrich our national dialogue, to enrich our national history. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The representative of our special guest of honor, Dr. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, Chief Osita Chidoka. We're indeed grateful. We wish to formally recognize and welcome the Letterman himself, to the whole. Thank you, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, for honoring us with your distinguished presence this afternoon. He came in all the way from Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, to be with us at this event. We are indeed honored by your presence, sir. Thank you, and thank you. We'll have a conversation with the author, and we'll invite one of our own, Kadaria Ahmed, to anchor this segment. We apologize to you, Kadaria, that this program should have taken place some minutes before now, and you have patiently waited up until now. We hope that when that private jet that we're working on acquiring comes on stream, then we'd have to have issues with. Please usher Kadaria Ahmed and the author onto the stage. Thank you very much. Thank you. Please have them up the stairs. It's a bit steep. Thank you. You're welcome. Muskele Moju, Kadaria Ahmed, the floor is yours.
Mr. President, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm sure all of you will agree that Bishop Kuka has done such an outstanding job of reviewing this book. It is very difficult for anyone, I think, to try and have a conversation that will be riveting to do with the actual content of the book itself. So what I have chosen to do with this conversation today is to try and understand the author and how putting this book together affected him, and get a sense of the insights that perhaps he gleaned for putting what is a significant piece of work together, because it is about a unique and a significant leader across the continent. Hi, Musikilo. Do you want to use one? Okay. All right. So when Bishop Kuka started his review, he talks about the fact that he said the idea for this book came to you accidentally, but said that when you read the book, he doesn't see it that way. He sees it more as a bit of genius, really, inspirational. What I want to start with is asking you to actually describe that moment in which you realize that actually there's a treasure trove of letters that could give us a significant insight into history, into politics, and a whole myriad of other things like leadership, not just Nigeria, but across the continent, because of the nature of the man whose letters you were looking at.
Thank you, first of all, Papa's appearance today is a huge surprise, because we wrote to him and he did not but and I was told he was in Ethiopia, so I'm surprised that he's here. Anyway, so I've had this professional relationship with Baba for some time, and so even though people say he doesn't like journalists, but he always talk to me, and that is.
He's refused to talk to me.
So, and that is, I don't know why, but I try to maintain decent relationships with sources, low and high level sources. And most of the people in this room today have had all kind of relationship with them. And that was the kind of relationship I had with Baba, going back many years. So one day we were reporting, and I traveled to see Baba in Abeokuta. That was, it was not a pleasant, because I would ask him tough questions. At times, Baba would be hungry, And in fact, there was a time I interviewed him, and he was so pissed off that if it were on TV, we see him eating me on the thigh, seriously, and say, Moji, do you think I really did this or something? So you could see expression of anger in him. So this day I went to interview him for a story we were doing. And after the turbulent interview, and I was going away, and I asked him, I said, Baba, you were to build a library. What is the progress? And Baba was happy. I could see his face changed. And he said, oh, the library, we've gone very far. We've gone very far. If you are not in a hurry to leave Abeokuta, I could take you on the tour of where we are on the project. So, of course, there was no way, I didn't need any persuasion to accept, even though I had already thought I would simply go back to Lagos and come back to Abuja. So Baba said I should enter his car. So we went on a tour of the library, and then we went to one building behind, one small building, holding the archive of the presidential library. You could see several files, you see artifacts, you see documents, and they were well labeled in boxes. So Baba said, oh, this is this one, and books, several books, thousands of books. So we went through, I think it was, we spent not quite 20 minutes there. So we went, I spoke to the staff, but what fascinated me the more were the letters. In those, some blue boxes, some red boxes, and what I was thinking at the time, that maybe there will be letters here that could form the basis of exclusive stories. I thought maybe there were things here, and I picked them, I drew one, they said correspondences with foreign leaders. So I drew one, and I pulled out the letters. And so as I was about flipping through, Baba filed out, and his heads filed out of the archive building. You know, since he brought me there, I abandoned the file, the box. But at that time, my appetite was sufficiently well, and I thought I needed to come back here. If not for anything, but for great stories that arise from the library.
Well, was it easy to convince him to give you access with the book in mind?
No, Baba never gave me access till now. This is complete unauthorized work. It's completely.
You didn't break. You didn't break into the library.
No. Let me explain to you what happened.
Please explain.
Baba did not give me access. In fact, in any case, I can accuse him of blocking access. You understand? So because so now I left after he took me back in his car. I had my own car waiting in his house. So he took me, tried to make me to eat lunch. I said no, because I needed to fly back to Abuja. So I said, okay, I needed to go back to that library. In any case, what I was thinking of were possible great stories. Telling Baba that you want to go and look at his letter, I'm not sure he was going to allow that. So I wanted to go the other way. So I said to, I think the managing, Baba is the coordinator of the library. That's one of the positions he holds. But there is a deputy coordinator of the library. So I tried to reach him. I couldn't. Then I got the managing director of the Obasanjo, Olusegun Obasanjo library venture. He said him Vitalis. And I telephoned him. I said, look, the library is not open, but I want to do research at the library. And he said, but the library is not open. What kind of research? I said, I want to look through some of the books and some of the documents in the library. And
you lied.
Well, yeah, that if you call that lie. I said, look, I want to research from the library. And he said, well, you could do limited research. You can do some limited research from the library. And I said, okay. So on that visit, I spent 3 days. He allowed me, but they said, you can't take anything away from the library. You can't photocopy anything from the library because the library was not open. But, another thing was, I took copious notes. I knew that I suspected that they might not allow me back because the staff in the archive saw clearly that I was more interested in the letters. I was pouring through the letter. I had, these are journalistic methods. While they were saying I couldn't take away the letter, I had my iPad. So I had my phone. When they said you couldn't take away copies, but I had materials that could help me take away copies. So anyway, so as far as they were concerned, so at a point when they realized that I was more interested in the letters, they said I needed to obtain official permission. I needed to write a letter, and the board of the library security around him. Maybe he had a way of knowing, but he didn't discuss with me. So I, went on with the work, and until maybe a week ago, I gave him copies of the book to look at. But he also did not indicate whether he will even come for this. Okay. So this book, this work is completely unauthorized, and I don't know if Baba had intelligence that I was doing a book, but I knew that Chief Anyauku, the way statesmen try to be very careful, they have shared the forward with it.
Okay, so I mean, you managed to put the book together. The letters that you went through, did you get the sense that it was literally all the letters, or did you feel that there were letters that Baba had kept to himself, and which we may not be privileged to actually have access to, perhaps until a later date?
Well,
or do you think that you actually saw everything?
I thought my suspicion is that Baba gave all he had to the library without even realizing what he had. Perhaps if he knew, he would have removed some things from the library.
Okay.
And that's the point. If Baba knew the material in the library and the work I was doing, he would have either stopped it or removed some materials from the library.
Why do you say that?
Now, I'm not sure Baba wants a controversy with anybody.
Are you sure?
I'm not too sure.
It doesn't shy away
But
from
I cannot say that he would like that. He might be thinking, because I remember after the book, after people started talking about the book, one of his aides called me and said, this letter that you released, this one letter, are you not talking about, is it not classified? And none of that. We were talking about that I had released classified, and I said no. Even if the letters were classified, it's 50 years has passed, and we still cannot be talking of things being classified. I suspect that if I had approached Baba and said, these are the letters I have, and this is the work I'm doing, I'm not sure. I suspect that he probably will not allow. Now, let me give you another example.
I need to ask you something.
No, because the question you asked me about whether Baba knew, I've read some books that Baba wrote, from My Command to Not My Will to My Watch, and a few of his. I believe that if Baba knew what he had in his life, the books would have been different. The books would have been remarkably different. I believe he had forgotten a lot of things. He had forgotten about. Now, let me talk about his quarrel with Alabi Sama.
Before you do,
okay.
Because you've read so much, and I'm sure it's not everything that you read that is in this book, I think you have a unique insight into him. So I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot and ask you to tell us what you now make of Baba.
Okay. Now,
your conclusion about the man, the leader, and I know that Bishop Kuka, in sort of talking about the book, did some of this assessment. I mean, Baba wasn't here to hear, but from the sort of, you have a unique perspective. I'd really like to hear your assessment.
Now, I'll tell you how I grew up first, before I talk about what I now know.
Okay.
Now, growing up, especially for those of us in the Southwest, Baba was not that much of a hero. And that was the mentality with which we grew up, because we believed that we were somehow that he didn't allow Yoruba man to become president. That he deliberately sought victory in the direction of Shu Shagari. And that's why you see that even in 1999, the Yoruba people were not enthusiastic about his candidature. I don't know how much of a hero he is today, even in Yoruba land. Because of that history, we grew up not liking him. Okay, do not let me say we. I grew up not liking him. Because, and even my journalism, I never bothered much about him, you know.
Your perception had been shaped.
Had been shaped, which is also a dangerous thing for a journalist. A journalist must be open-minded. We must be open-minded about people, about things. It was not a good thing, but I realized that I was wrong. So as I began, even as I related with him, I wasn't much of his fan. I just realized I made them for professional reason. If I want to interview, I talk to him. If I'm writing a story concerning him, he talks to me. That was all I thought I needed. But when I started researching, the things that I saw shocked me. You know, it was not easy to write about him in positive terms. people, he never bother, people write all kind of things, he doesn't bother to correct whether they are right or wrong, and that's the issue that that most of us know. So now, doing this work, reading this letter, there are so many letters that I saw that are not in my book, because you just have to stop somewhere. But reading these letters, both the ones contained in this book and the ones that I still have and the ones that I saw and read, suggested to me that there is much more than Obasanjo that we know. For instance, I was amazed that as a young man in maybe 30 or something, he already knew the importance of record keeping. One of the first things that he did when he arrived at the war front was a letter to his men and officers and said they should bring whatever record they are collected during the war, their own personal diaries, war diaries, and whatever, and that they should all keep records. They should keep war diaries. And look at, he kept so much diary, so much record, that he was able to, anything that he does, he's able to write a book at the end of it all. I'm sure he's going to write about his Ethiopia experience very soon.
Okay, so I mean, the controversy around him surrounds the fact that he seems to write letters to people who are in power or doing the job that he used to do. Now that you've sort of read those letters and many more letters that he's written, in your view, are his letters justified?
Well, I don't want to, because I really didn't delve into interviewing all the characters involved. If you see the way the book is written, I'm not saying the letter is good or bad.
What they set out to do.
Well, for you to come to a conclusion, you will have to consider all the context. And for you to get the accurate context, we have to talk to the characters involved in the letter exchange. But I could see that most of what Baba's in his letters were good. That I can say. Whether the other people's were wrong or right, I don't know. But
given the insight these letters are now giving, thanks to the work you're doing, putting them in the public domain, you must believe that they are significant and they make a valuable contribution to conversations around leadership, Pan-Africanism, politics, and everything that is important, particularly at a time when we're going through so much turbulence, not just locally, but internationally.
Well, the letters were very significant and historical, and which is why I spent all my time working on it for several years. You could see, until I started researching, I didn't even know that what Obasanjo did for the apartheid struggle, for the liberation struggle in Africa. If you read the book, you will realize that Obasanjo spent his time and resources, including funding guerrilla movements, in Africa, just for Africa to be free. So you can see that, people usually will say, I remember when I interviewed Obasanjo once, and he got very angry. I asked him about the Aliburton bribery, the CNN bribery scam, and all of that occurred during his regime. And he felt very bad, and he wanted me to explain whether I have any evidence that he benefited from any of those scams. But when reading the book, you could see that as a young officer, he was completely somebody who preached transparency. And one thing that I noticed, maybe I'm right or wrong, is that Obasanjo appeared, I think Bishop Kuka hinted at that. Obasanjo appeared to have some kind of moral superiority over his superiors and subordinates, which is why the way he speaks to people, and nobody is able to do anything about it. There was a letter he wrote to General Adebayo, So now, Alabi Sama told General Adinka Adebayo that he helped Obasanjo to secure a plot of land in Ibadan. And Obasanjo was angry. And he wrote, remember at the time, Obasanjo was a colonel, General Adebayo was a brigadier. I was the governor of the Western region. And Obasanjo wrote to him, accusing him of peddling falsehood, of behaving in a way unbecoming of an officer of his stature, and that only God knows whatever falsehood he has been spreading about him, and that if there is anything he has benefited, not as a citizen of Nigeria, General Adinka should tell him, so he could return it. You know, so you could see the courage with which he writes some of the letters that he wrote. In fact, he was telling the Chief of Army Staff one day, he said, if you feel what I've done is wrong, withdraw my commission, which is, he was telling the Chief of Army Staff to say, if you feel that I've done some, you don't agree with me, start me. You know, so I'm wondering how he survived in the army. Maybe and that is one of the things that shocked me about this work. How did this man should have, today the army officers, there are a number of army officers who did nothing and they were dismissed, they were forcefully retired from service. They have not gotten justice. Now look at in those days, and a colonel standing up to commander-in-chief, to the Chief of Army Staff, to his superiors in very strong language, saying whatever he feels and whatever he thinks, whenever he thinks is right. So
outside the insight into him as a person, a leader, and everything that he is, are there any other insights you got into sort of leadership, both within Nigeria but also within the continent, that you think perhaps is pertinent for today?
Okay. Now, one thing, you see, diplomacy. I see that diplomacy in Nigeria is an all-time low now. I could see through Obasanjo's letter the influence Nigeria wielded, not just in Africa, but around the world. Most African countries, they run to Nigeria for solutions to their problem. And the way even Margaret Thatcher, remember it was, I think the first visit of an American president to Nigeria was during Obasanjo. You could see, even though Obasanjo had friendship with Jimmy Carter, you could see how firm and strongly. Look, if Jimmy Carter says a thing he doesn't agree with, that is not in tandem with what Nigeria believes, Obasanjo will stand up to Jimmy Carter. So one thing that I learned is that Nigeria has lost its place as a strong nation. How many small countries come to us now? We are not even presenting the right kind of example.
And is there anything in that letter or in those letters that perhaps indicates how that? Is there anything in those letters that you read that perhaps indicates how that position can be regained?
Well, if we have the right kind of, I think the bishop mentioned that if we have the right kind of leader who understand what they are doing, who have strong convictions, we can regain that. We really can. Look, Obasanjo, if we had continued from the letters that I saw and that which you will read in a chapter called The African Liberation Struggle and all of that, you will see that even when Obasanjo was in power, we could say through the barrel of the gun, because of course he was not elected during his first campaign as head of state. Obasanjo would fight people elsewhere who perhaps elected but were carrying out acts that he thought were undemocratic.
So
let me finish.
Okay.
Let me finish. So, for instance, when executions were going on in Ghana, if you remember, when
Rawlings.
Obasanjo mounted a global campaign against the Ghanaian government, writing to every world leaders to stand up against Ghana. There was a time that Idi Amin, I think some people criticized his government ended up being assassinated. Obasanjo rose against him. So you could see that at very critical moment, if Nigeria had continued along that line, I don't know what Nigerian position will have been now in the world.
Okay, so 2 last questions, and then I think I'll take maybe 2 questions from the audience in case someone wants to ask you something pressing. The first question is, given what you just said, there are those who argue that generally on the continent, and that therefore in Nigeria, the way we practice democracy isn't suitable for us. And if you look at sort of where we were and where we are now, you're forced to sort of rethink whether this system has worked for us. And we've had people say, perhaps when we get good leaders, we should allow them go on for longer. In the light of that debate, what do you make of where we were, where we are now, and the current democracy we're practicing, which doesn't seem to throw up the best people for the job?
Well, I agree entirely with you. I think I was discussing this with some colleagues yesterday in the office about it's so sad that we've continued to get the quality of leadership that we have has continued to erode gradually. Looking at what I've read, and I'm relying so much on the work that I've done over time, get the succeeding leaders, especially at the federal level that we've had. It's so sad that we could drop in quality in terms of leadership that we've had. And that's at the heart of our problem. I don't know how we are going to resolve that. If you have an Obasanjo who understands issues, who can hold his own with anyone around the world, and then you come down to somebody who doesn't understand even what is going on at a meeting, how do you want to make progress? So I think Nigerians must, at this point, know that there can be no progress if we do not solve the issue of the quality of leaders that we have in our country.
And my last question before I call people in the audience to talk to you is that obviously we're in a digital world. So letter writing has literally just died. Very few people write letters now. And given the role that they play in preserving history, in sort of explaining relationships and all that, what's going to replace them? Will emails ever be the same?
Well, I don't think letter writing will return. I don't think so. Because people like Obasanjo,
And that's a loss, isn't it? It's a big loss.
It's a big loss because people write letters from the heart. Even the handwriting, once you are reading letters written by people, you could say how organized or disorganized they could be. Even when you undo the envelope, somebody entering your house, the letterman delivering these letters, there is a connection. So letter writing has a different appeal to us. I'm not sure letter writing will remain.
Should we be encouraging it?
We should encourage people to be writing letters. For instance, there is something that I also find about Obasanjo that I need to point out. If Obasanjo holds a meeting, there was a day Obasanjo had a meeting with, I'll give like 3 instances. Once, Obasanjo had a meeting with Alabi Sama and other officers during the war. And as Alabi Sama was returning to his post, Obasanjo was writing to him about the meeting they already had, documenting what they discussed at the meeting, and telling Alabi Sama how he felt about it. One other, he had a meeting with Dite Spiff. And once he returned to his office, he documented the discussions in a letter and sent to it is to be clear. These are details. The was surprised. And there was another one, after the episode that the bishop talked about. After he said, calm my foot. Yeah. And then calm delegation visited him in Aso Rock. And they had meeting and they resolved it. They thought it had all been resolved. As they were going, Obasanjo was writing letter to them about, you came to my office, this was what we discussed. So Obasanjo, I think he enjoys letter writing. And one other thing, Obasanjo likes to document things. If you meet him, he wants to be sure that, look, this is what we discuss. And this is what I said, this is what I disagree with. A lot of us do not do that. And it is good to do that. Even when you hold meeting with people, it's good to document this.
Thank you, Mr. Kili. I'll take 3 questions or comments, and then that will be it. One, the lady behind, and this side, maybe anybody? Okay, we have only 2. Okay, the gentleman in the middle, back. Please keep it short because we run out of time. Yeah. The mic. Yes.
We'll try and keep it short, please. Name and then the question.
Thank you very much. My name is Abiola Lawal. Also been very opportunity to just spend a few minutes with Baba, and it's always a pleasure to learn a lot from him. To the question about letter writing and the culture of letter writing, it seems to me that one of the biggest challenges we have, particularly in Africa and Nigeria inclusive, is that there's no enough case studies that allow us to be able to replicate success. So with this letter writing as an example, it will be very nice to ask the question, now that Baba is here, what can we do to be able to replicate those kind of success factors and culture that made him successful, and the discipline that it took to be able to get those kind of things done? Because even letter writing itself is a discipline that leaders must cultivate. Thank you.
Thank you. The lady, name the question.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Mariam Bakari. I'm from Voice of Nigeria. So the question I would like to ask now is, this is a historical genre as far as I'm concerned because it has historical facts. How do we get this to the youth? Because if you're trying to encourage letter writing, I believe this is also a good start where when they read these books, they could also understand the effect of letter writing. So how do youths get involved in this?
Thank you. Just one more. I think that is it. Your name and I hope we can see you from there.
Yeah, very good afternoon to everybody. My name is Ochiaka Ugu, and I just want to ask about what do we do so that our leadership quality will become a serious with the development we're supposed to experience. Because not long ago, the Chinese Communist Party extended the term of the president of China to 5 years. And China said they're practicing democracy with their own characteristics. So my question is, I'm asking you that, how do we develop our own democracy with our own characteristics so that we can make development? Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's the much we can take from this time. I hope does it work? I think it works now. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think basically, most of the questions are really beyond the context with which I wrote. So, but I'm going to answer them. The first question is about what do we do to promote the culture of letter writing? Well, the world has changed. It's difficult to insist that people must write letter. We can only try and encourage people to do so. In these days of email, of people communicate in several other ways. In the days that of Babas, it was either you fax, you write or face-to-face communication, or you call people on telephone. There are more avenues. now for people to communicate. So we can only continue to say people should write letter. But there are ways now, if letter is about just communication, there are several other avenues to do so. Maybe, I don't know whether Baba will make any comment at this event, so maybe we'll respond to some of the other one is about young people. Well, this is a different age, and I don't think the young people have come into a very different context, and they should write letters. No, of course, she was talking about how do we encourage young people to write letters. Well, they should read this book, that is one. Secondly, letter writing is so important. Even at work, organizational communication, they call it. If you write letters in some particular way to your staff members, they will either be demoralized or they will be encouraged to be more productive. So letter writing is a skill that we all must cultivate, whether we do so in emails or whatever. So because even letters can be sent via emails, so we should try to cultivate. I don't know how much the quality of instruction now in elementary and secondary school. In our days, by the time we left primary school, we were pretty good at writing letters for people in the neighborhood. So I don't know what the case is now. Not guess. Yeah. But even when you learn to write letters to guess, I think it's a necessary skill as well. So the last question, he was talking about quality of leadership. I'm not sure. I think I spoke about that earlier. Yeah.
Try this. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Help me with a round of applause for Olusegun. I highly recommend the book, and I actually think people who are here, because of a young lady talking about how can they get involved, I think anybody who can buy and donate these books to schools should please do so. Olusegun, thank you for a wonderful piece of writing. I enjoyed reading it, and thank you for talking to us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kaderia. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for your patience and the understanding. We are indeed grateful. I thank you, Muskilu. You did obtain permission from Baba and you went into his archives. Well, we've been told that we'll hear from His Excellency Chief Olusegun Obasanjo later on, but that would be bringing up the rear because we'd love to hear from the sage himself. But at this point, we'll speed up the process somewhat. We'll take some goodwill messages at a point, but before then, we'll go on to the presentation of the publication. I have the very special privilege and pleasure to now invite Mrs. Ifeko Omoigui Okawo to make the presentation. Please let's put our hands together over. Thank you, thank you. You want to rather? Okay, fantastic. All right. Do I invite them or you? Okay. All right. So would invite so that she's not alone there in doing this. We'd also invite some of our other special guests who are here, particularly those sitting in the front row. What has happened at the other end? Our chairman, for instance, would love to have you here. We also love to have you, ma'am, to give support to your sister. The representative of the governor of Sokoto State will also love you to join. The chairman of Premium Times, please join Mrs. Ifekwemo Igwe-Okauru. FFK, please also join along. I know that later on we'll hear from you when you share some messages, goodwill messages with us. Can I invite distinguished Senator Seriake Dixon to also join along with us? Please, don't leave the walking stick behind. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And I think our chairman, when he does come, will join us. Bishop Kuka, Bishop Kuka, sir, please also join us here because you are the one who. Oh, okay, Baba. Baba was putting his hand in his pocket. Can we have the representative of the EU join us, please? Thank you. Thank you. At least let's have some color to this process. Aha. Thank you. All right. The floor is yours, ma'am. Dapo, Dapsy, please, where are you?
He's gone out to see Kadao.
Oh, okay.
So it's my pleasure to present the book, The Letterman. I think we all have copies of this, holding each of them. So just take one at a time. Thank you. The Letterman, as is stated here, is inside the secret, quote-unquote, letters of former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo. It's my privilege as a former subordinate of our dear president to present this book as a 466-page book. Has picked about 25 letters, very well articulated by Bishop Kuka. So please read his research and presentation on the book. And it gives an insight into General Olusegun Obasanjo in ways no one will ever have done. It's a surprise he's here, but we're very glad that he's here. I can tell you my own personal story, just talking about working under him. And it was an absolute delight. But I must say that anytime I'm describing my time with General Obasanjo, I was always hearing contradictory comments. You don't know General Olusegun Obasanjo. And I will have this argument. And I'm personally glad that this book has vindicated those of us who worked under him, that we enjoyed working with a man who was courageous, proud of his convictions, and was no yes person. So for everyone who is to get this book, there are 3 reasons to get this book. Number 1, the subject matter himself. It gives you an insight into the man, a real insight that tells you that what you see didn't just happen as a flash. It's consistent, it's constant, it's deep, and it's founded on conviction. The second reason is the author. Olusegun is just like General Olusegun Obasanjo. You can see from the conversation that he went out to do what he needed to do. And I hope General Olusegun Obasanjo will tell us how he allowed him to do this, because I'm sure there was a way around that. Olusegun is someone that we've known for a very long time. Again, honestly, he's genuine, he's authentic. Anything you see here, anything he says, is what he is. And that's one reason to buy this book. The third reason is to read the letters. And so from all of us, please pick this book, buy it not just for yourself, buy it for others, put it out there. Every school should have it, every library. Encourage everyone, the youth, and maybe we should think of other ways of presenting this book. Podcasts, virtual ways, book readings. This is just the beginning. So thank you very much for this. I'd like to call General Olusegun Obasanjo to join us now, please. Thank you.
Where is our brother? Come. He came with his sir. No, sir.
No, sir. Right at the center, sir.
Where is it?
Thank you very much, sir. We're indeed grateful. Thank you. Congratulations. Congratulations. We shall now call for some goodwill messages. And in the process, we shall also urge those who are going to support the process of the presentation so that we can make distributions to schools, to colleges, to universities, and to libraries across the world. Thank you very much, Mrs. Ifekwama, for a wonderful presentation. We do have quite a number of distinguished guests who are here, those who are also representing some other personalities here this afternoon. So without ado, as we call on you to step forth to also make a formal presentation and support the launch, let me use the word now, the launch of the publication, because we want these books to be in the hands of as many Nigerians, as many Africans, and as many citizens of the world as possible. Thank you. Let's keep it down, please. Let's keep it down. Let's all take our seats. Thank you. Thank you. Let's take our seats. Thank you. Please, let's take our seats. Thank you. We shall invite you to step forth to formally launch the publication, because we want it in the hands of as many Nigerians, as many Africans, as many citizens of the world as possible. I'm going to begin in a particular order. Let me invite the former Minister of Aviation, who is here representing, I was almost going to say representing NEPA, who is here representing the presidential candidate of the APC, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, for his goodwill message and to formally launch the presentation. Let's welcome Chief Femi Kayode. Thank you. I know the day is young. Baba flew in from Addis Ababa this afternoon, and so we'll try and keep it short and sharp.
Thank you, my bro.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Blessed be the name of the Most High God, the God whose I am and the God whom I serve. Blessed be his holy name forever. Let me start by standing on all protocols, Mr. President, the chairman of the day, the bishop, and all other distinguished ladies and gentlemen that are here. It gives me great honor, and of course, my friend and brother, the senator, former governor, and the other excellencies that are here. Now, let me just start by saying that I'm here wearing two caps. It was last night that I was asked to say a few words here to represent our candidate, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, but I had already planned to come here in my own personal capacity. So I'm speaking with two hats here. But let me start with a goodwill message from our candidate and also to launch from him. Then I'll say a few things on my own behalf. First of all, our candidate extends tremendous respect to the author and to the subject matter of this book. It's a great book, long overdue, and it will be very revealing to the Nigerian people precisely what the contents are. And we have always had respect for Mojid. He's somebody of immense integrity. He's somebody that people can relate to, and he's somebody that Asiwaju has tremendous respect for. Unlike most, he always seeks the other side of the story, and that's what makes him so special. So we are fully behind him in this. Asiwaju and his entire team, and there are others here as well, very senior members of the campaign organization are here, and we're very proud of his effort as a Nigerian to come out with great work. And the way in which he did it also speaks volumes about what a good journalist he really is. And it's our pleasure to launch this book. I will not specify the amount, but the candidate has asked me to say we will launch it with a very handsome amount of money, and we will collect 10 copies to take back today. So that's that aspect, and that's the message from Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Now, on a personal note, let me say this. I'd just like to quickly speak as somebody that was working and still is one of the most loyal people and people that just prefer President Olusegun Obasanjo. Like Ikeko said earlier, I had the privilege of working under him as a spokesman and also as a minister. And there's nothing that has been said here that the bishop said or that has been revealed in this book about the content of his character that surprises me. And anybody that thinks that President Obasanjo looks stupid, as somebody has suggested, or he himself has suggested to Chidoka and others in the past, has to be pretty stupid themselves. All you have to do is look into his eyes when he's speaking, and you know the depth of this man. He's extremely intelligent, very discerning, very sharp, very firm, very, very tough, and most importantly, he's very patriotic. He loves this country with a passion. And I'll give you 3 examples of that very briefly. The first one was when he came in and I first started interacting with him. He was so hostile to the idea of the OPC and Yoruba secession. And many of us were alarmed because we felt that, look, after what he had been through, that surely he would understand the aspirations of some in the Southwest that wanted to break off from the country. President Obasanjo asked Akio Shutoku and I, we had not joined government at this time. On one occasion, he said we should leave the villa, leave his sitting room, because he would not hear any talk of OPC or any talk of secession or the rights of the Southwest. He was very, very firm. And I've never forgotten that experience. That is the measure of his love for Nigeria, even though he had been through what he went through in the hands of the military administration that had locked him up and framed him up. So that was the first one. The second one was when I was minister, and the German ambassador came to the office. There was some aviation issues, and we had decided to be very hard on the Germans and the French and some others. So we grounded them. We wouldn't let them fly to Lagos. They were being unfair to us. And the German ambassador was very rude to me. He was rude to me in front of my staff and the media and everything. We still have the recording. Trying to tell us how to run our affairs in the country. And of course, I would have none of that. And I asked him to allow ambassadors from other countries to interfere in our affairs here. So all of you, please stand firm, don't let them interfere, and carry on your work. That's when I realized that there is no way, unlike most leaders, and I have to say this, in this country, this man will never compromise on the integrity of this country. He will never back down, and he will never allow any foreign power or any foreign person to tell us what to do. So I'm not surprised with what is in those letters. One last example, and this is a very interesting one. I was assigned to be the person, the minister, to be with the late Muammar Gaddafi when he came to Nigeria. It was the summit of African heads of state and South American heads of state. And of course, Gaddafi came in great fanfare. I was quite shocked. It was an honor for me to be asked to be with him, you know. So I waited for him at the airport. We were all waiting, and people were coming in. People from Libya, all the security team. It was very intimidating. But when the great leader now came down, we got in the car to leave the airport to go to town. And we were stopped at the gate. And, I was so embarrassed. The security people did not let us go past. We went back. I apologized to him. We went and started speaking about it. It was a very embarrassing situation. I put calls through to my boss in November, General Abdullah Muhammad. I don't know what's going on. Well, he had to bring in through the boots of their various in the sun, and everybody else, all the bodyguards, the drivers, they all got, and there we were, and of course I had to go with them. We were walking down the road, and I was thinking to myself, what happens if this man, he was an elderly man, the sun was like drops, I mean, we can't walk all the way to Abuja. It was I said, we're walking to Abuja, we're right here in the streets, and the man said he's going to walk, that if they won't let the cars in, they'll walk. So the chief of staff said, look, don't worry, but the president is on his way to the airport and he will resolve the issue. That's what saved the day. And I went to Gaddafi. I said, look, sir, your brother is coming there to resolve this issue right now. So please let's not walk any further. He said, coming? I said, he's coming right now. He's on his way to come and solve this problem. So he said, okay, that's how he went back into the waiting room. When we got back to the waiting room, within 15 minutes, the president arrived with great fanfare. And he came straight to see Gaddafi, greeted him, very, as if nothing had happened. That's what struck me. And then Mr. President now said he's going to Lagos to do something. He's coming back later in the day. And then Gaddafi now told him there were some issues. Mr. President said, don't worry, it will be resolved. And as he was leaving, I went after. I said, sir, what are we going to do about this? You know what Baba said to me? He said, they're going to go with his arms. They're not going to allow it to Oh my God. So I realized we still have a problem. So I went back. I told them, they said, okay, third time, let's try. They stopped us one more time after that. And until those arms were removed from the boots of those cars, we were not allowed in. It was after the arms were removed, that's when we were allowed to come into town. And that's the measure of the CNC that we had in those days. It was an honor and a privilege to serve under you, sir. And let me tell you, Nigeria still hasn't done justice to what you have done for this country over the years. I dare say it here and now, the best cabinet that we ever had in this country was the cabinet that you formed in 2003 up until 2007. You gave us leadership, you gave us courage, you gave us strength, and you allowed us to disagree with you in cabinet meetings, and that was the greatest lesson of all. So I congratulate you, I congratulate Mochi for this wonderful book, and may God guide us and lead us all. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. What is Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Femi Fanikayode. Thank you for taking us down memory lane. Thank you very much. We're trying to manage time as much as possible. We'll create the indulgence of His Excellency Chief Olusegun Obasanjo to give us just some 5-10 minutes to hear from one or two persons before we invite you to speak to us from your fountain of wisdom. I'll hear from Kogi State, please. Honorable Kingsley Fawo, representing the governor of Kogi State. Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Seriake Dixon, we would love you to also lend support to what we're doing, sir.
Yeah. Please.
Okay. Your Excellency, sir, and let me just stand on the way to this book house. It is an honor to be here. I have not read the book, but a book by a brilliant journalist must be a brilliant book. So we are confident that this is just one of the many books that will be written about President Olusegun Obasanjo. It looks like everybody that had encountered him will definitely have a lot to say about the fact that the man remains one of the greatest leaders this country had ever produced. On this note, on behalf of the governor of Kogi State, we will be getting 5 copies of the book for ₦1 million. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What's your step? Thank you very much, Kogi State. Thank you. Now I invite the representative of the special advisor to the president on information, media and publicity, and strategy, etc., etc. Thank you very much. Thank you. Please watch your steps. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Your Excellencies, particularly the former President of Nigeria, and of course the author. Mr. Femi Adesina, the Special Advisor to the President of Media and Publicity, would have loved to be here, but for the exigencies of his work, and he has sent me to buy 5 copies of this book for 300,000 naira. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Femi Adesina. Thank you very much. Now I invite the representative of the governor of Sokoto State. Sokoto, please. Watch your steps, please. Thank you. Let's keep it.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to you all. I'm Muhammad Akibu Dalhatu, the Commissioner for Information and Orientation, Sokoto State, to represent His Excellency, Right Honorable Amin Waziri Tambo. In fact, I know that His Excellency, if not for a very, very crucial special engagement, would have left to be here. Until yesterday evening, he was to come here, but he called me to come here to represent him because of a very tight schedule. I know he must love to be here because one thing is, Baba is his father, and the father has so much respect. And also, the author is a very close friend of his, so he cannot come here. I'm here in the capacity of, let me say, a commissioner for information, an event like this. They want to come and represent him. He gave me a blank check to come here and decide what to give or how to buy. Not as his capacity, not in his capacity as the chairman of Nigeria's Governors Forum, or the chairman of PDP's Governors Forum, or the DG of the great party PDP campaign management council. But as a governor of Sokoto State, that's how I stand here to, maybe I will use my the permission I have with a blank check to decide the chances. Please maybe buy 10 copies of this book for 2 million naira. I know it's more lunch, because I talk about his capacities, and he will launch personally. He will buy these copies or some other copies on behalf of the campaign council, on behalf of the Governors Forum, on behalf of the PDP Governors Forum. But for now, this is the amount I announced, and just 10 copies. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sokoto State. Thank you, Governor Tambuwal, and the Honorable Commissioner. Thank you. A hardback edition goes for 25,000 naira, and the paperback edition goes for 15,000 naira. I can see that some persons are already queuing up at that end to pick up copies. But we wish to invite, before we invite General Olusegun Obasanjo, we wish to invite Governor Seriake Dixon. Let's support what we are doing, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you. So this still all right, sir.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, our former president and our leader and father, the chairman of this occasion, ladies and gentlemen, I am very happy
actually feel honored to be part of this event this afternoon. I came here to associate myself with this program mainly for two reasons, or should I say three. The first being to support my friend Majid, who's a wonderful professional that needs to be supported and encouraged. He has clearly demonstrated that not only in what he's been doing as a journalist all these years, winning several coveted awards, but also, as we've clearly seen, in what he has been able to put together in this wonderful masterpiece. Secondly, to associate, as we always want to do, with anything that has to do with our leader and father. That's an iconic statesman and leader, not only of our country, not only of our continent, one of the greatest leaders in the world. And we are privileged to have him here. I didn't know I was going to meet Baba here. And Majid and all of you organizers, thank you for this opportunity. What I was going to see in Nota, Mabiokuta, you've created an opportunity to see Baba once again here. It's like looking for something in Sokoto when something is there in your Sokoto. So I came here and got to pay. The third thing is to support any work that has to do with the preservation and recording of our history. And particularly for a subject matter like Baba, whose entire life and activities is so intricately intertwined, as my Lord Bishop Kuka rightly said in his review, with the entire history of our nation. I'm a lover of history. Even though I didn't study history, I ended up studying law. When I think for some time, I read more history, actually, than I read law. And what Majid has captured here is to provide a context that will make us better understand most of the epochal developments in our country, particularly the ones Baba and his colleagues had to deal with. And so I want to support this book with the sum of 2 million naira for 20 copies. For 20 copies, which I will keep in my library. I was honored that was gracious enough always to be around encouraging and supporting me while I served as governor. And Baba was the one who even commissioned my library, my small library. Because after visiting his great library, I got the inspiration also to learn to document and keep records. And Baba honored me and came to open my library. So these 20 copies will be at my library. But before I take my seat, I want to challenge the journalists who are here and scholars to undertake more research into the lives and activities of our leaders. It's very important. For example, in America, every president who serves the American nation and is partly budgeted for, they build a presidential library. And in that library, they keep all the sort of things that Majid went using his journalistic means. Some of them legal, some not so quite legal. And I will leave issues of legality for now. That's what Baba and the foundation to raise. And I bet you they will be raised at the right time. But the point I'm making is that those who value history, they know that history is not just about the past. It provides a compass to the future and guides the present. Some friends and colleagues and I are currently working on something like that in the National Assembly. I hope it passes. I hope it sees the light of the day, by which, by law, any president that serves this nation, we should have a presidential library constructed
And for somebody like Baba who has pioneered the portions of the Olusegun Obasanjo Presidential Library should be borne by a national fund, because what is contained in that library and the purpose it is serving is a national purpose and shouldn't be left for the library to bear. That's my view. I hope the bill sees the light of day. And so I want to support this book with 2 million, 20 copies with 2 million, and congratulate my friend Majid for once again exhibiting brilliance in journalism as you have done. And I thank and appreciate all of you for finding time to encourage this work. Thank you and God bless you all.
No, don't worry. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Senator Siriaki Dixon. Thank you for the support. May I invite former Honorable Minister in the Federal Republic of Nigeria, also landlord, Modibo Umar, please. Thank you. Let's put our hands together for him. Thank you.
So this so it's very fun. Oh no.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. It's good to come after Senator Dixon because he's all oil money. I'm new. This oil that was discovered is in my local government, Bombay. So Baba played a big role on the exploration. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my president, and I'm glad to be given this opportunity to speak for 2 minutes or so about this occasion, but particularly about Baba, our president, because in this room that had worked with him, I'm one of them. Immediate encounter, I was the one who came to the first meeting that Baba chaired, and I was in the office of the Chief of Staff. And as usual, during the previous regimes, we take our time to write minutes, maybe a couple of days. And General Abdullahi, my boss, called me immediately the following morning, because we had the meeting around 4. It ended around 4 p.m. And so he said, Ali, those minutes. He said, you know, I was the president that I've been working. He said, better tell your staff, well, you know how we used to work. So from that time on, it became standard that when you cover the meeting with Mr. President, the deliberation and the minutes have to be in within a couple of hours. There are several anecdotes, several stories, but we don't have time. Several people have said it, my former colleagues here have said it, of how Baba have given us the wonderful opportunity. But particularly me, because after working for him as senior or special assistant, you know, in the office of the Chief of Staff, he called me, summoned me to his office, and he said that I should go and do the screening. I said, what for? You know, he said, go, we have discussed with the Chief of Staff. And in 2003, he made me Minister of State Power and Steel. And then, as God will have it, my name was not returned as nominee of the minister from my state. Baba, before even appointing his ministers,
appointed me senior special assistant in the office of the chief of staff. And so therefore I came back to the presidency again. And then he started this prophecy on me, because Baba is also a prophet. Whenever he looks at us, he sees me, he says, minister before. Only God knows what tomorrow will bring. And as you know, one day in 2006, he called me again. I was summoned. He said, go take your papers again. I said, I went to my friend, I was just say, what is happening? He said, you're going to be minister again. I said, this prophecy is already ordained. It's becoming true. So I became minister the second time, this time posted to Minister of Commerce and Industry. And as God will have it, in 2007, I don't think he will remember. He said, what are you going to be? He was asking me, chief of staff or SGF. I said, what is my own? You are the one that brought me into this. So he said, good, good. Then I eventually ended up as Minister of the Federal Capital Territory 3 times. All by the grace of the Almighty Allah and because of this distinguished Nigerian, distinguished sage. Couple of days we went to Abeokuta during before the primaries. And he looked at, the most important thing that really gladdens my heart is one Baba said at that occasion. I went with Apagwio. Otumba Fashawe was sitting there. And he said, between you, Modibo, and Apagwio, I don't know who knows me the best. He said, Modibo is fine. We don't say a lot because we are bounded by the public service rules, even while out of office. But if you know the things that we know Baba has done, some of this decision he has taken. That is why this book is a final indication for us, Baba, not for even you, because Mojit we have converted Mojit to our side. He has seen the enormous thing Baba has done and premium times. And it also gladdens my heart because the history of premium times will not be written without my name. The chairman knows, and my good friend Dapo, because I became absolutely enamored by their professionalism, and therefore I threw all my support to them up to now. So I'm going to donate, I'm going to buy 5 copies for 500,000 naira, inshallah. Thank you very much.
Minister again, and minister again and again. Thank you very much. I quickly invite the representative of Osun West Senatorial District, he came in from the UK this afternoon to be a part of this. The senator for the author, Osun West Senatorial District in Osun State. Senator Adilere Adeyemi, very excited.
Your Excellency, my Baba, my grandpa, the chairman of today's occasion, all protocols due distinguished. I'm very glad today to be here. In fact, I have to divert my route from Lagos to Abuja here. I just learned that Papa was in the same plane I took from Addis Ababa to this place today. I have much things to say. I can only and I was asked whether has changed to APC. Baba did not take APC when he was doing the work of his son. The second one is that compared today, I came into politics grey. I was a permanent secretary before I was drafted into politics. But during the answer, my farm, my house was attacked and all my properties were destroyed. Of all those who called me when I heard the call of Baba called me twice, everything that I say thank you, Baba. God will give you long life. I'm also very glad when I heard on the way that Baba is here. It's from my town. It's from Iwo. I'm from Iwo. I'm Iwo. I'm the Magaji of Iwo. And I thank God that one of my own brother is able to launch a book that attracts Nigeria to this book today. I congratulate you, my brother. At this point, I won't take your time. I'm going to take 5 copies. We are just. I'm going to take that one for 200,000 naira. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I greet you, my brother.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Watch it. Thank you very much, most distinguished Senator. We are indeed grateful. At this point, most distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, before we move the vote of thanks, we would be most honored to hear from Baba himself. He wouldn't need to come up this way, sir. He wouldn't need to come up this way, sir. Oh, wow.
Please be seated. Can you give me the microphone?
The other one. Not on. Let me turn
Okay, no, don't worry if it's not on.
Turn it on in a moment.
Well, let me.
Whoops. Sorry.
Okay. Let me begin by, should I say, apologies or explanation for my being here. because I did not intend to be here for a number of reasons. One, as you have heard from Musekilu, he did not take my permission to write this book. And until last week, Monday, I really didn't know that he was writing a book. When he brought me 2 copies of the book, hard back copies. And I read the book. I was completely flabbergasted by the amount of work that he has done in writing the book. So I was torn between what should I do or what should I not do. One, he didn't tell me before he wrote the book, but he has done an excellent job. Should I come? I said, well, I didn't ask him to do the work. He decided to do the work on his own, so he can stew in his own juice. Then I started reading the book, and I was liking what I was reading. And on 1 or 2 occasions, I read a part, I rang him, and I said, well, you have unearthed this particular one, this is good. I still didn't decide to come. He said he wrote a letter, and of course, when I'm not going to write, I don't want him to start quoting my letter. But then I met my Waterloo when I rang Bishop Kuka. Bishop Kuka and I had had an arrangement of something that we called him. I said, Bishop, maybe you have forgotten we had this thing to do. Oh, he said he was reading this book. I said, well, that's your own lookout. We are reading the book. He said, you know, I used to respect you before. Now I respect you more. I said, that's dangerous. That I will get to God before him. And he never argued with me. He said it's because of people like me that he became a priest. So that I can get to kingdom of, get to heaven. And I don't know where he will go if I go to heaven. But he then insisted that I should be here. And I said, no. You know what I've been doing in Ethiopia and all that. And I have to go to Ethiopia. He said, try and come. Well, meeting in Ethiopia was scheduled for yesterday and today. Can we put a meeting for 1 day instead of 2 days? Oh, they say it will be hard, but you are the chairman. If you can finish it in 1 day, oh, well and good. Oh, since I'm the chairman, and then came in this afternoon. I want to thank all of you who are here. Really, really amazingly good. Many, I finished reading it, and I will ask you to try and read it. There are many things, like Musikilu said, that I have forgotten, and he dug them up. He presented them. And when I read some of the letters, I marveled. A conversation I had with my sister. My sister, anytime you want interview now, you will get. Let me then give interview. You see, for me, journalists are like a nagging wife who has children for you. Because whatever you do, if it has not been reported, it has not been done. To watch how you interact with them. Because they will annoy you. They will ask questions that will put you off. And but Musikilu has one advantage. Since he has been interacting with me for a long time, I've learned to tolerate him, and he has learned to tolerate me. Now let me say a few things about what I've said and what questions have been raised. I believe very much in letter writing. Very much so. And I don't believe that letter writing is out of date. Because you have to communicate. And how else do you communicate? Except you sit down in a relaxed atmosphere. You have something to convey, and you put it down clearly, and pass it to somebody with whom you want to communicate. And I don't see any substitute for that. And when Olusegun was here, I'm reading the message of President Goodluck Jonathan. He brought out what letter writing had done in the history of the Americans. Letter writing is also an art. Bishop Kuka, when he was talking to me about this book after he has read it, he said the language. Of course, you must be very careful in the choice of your language. You really want to convey unmistakably, directly, and depending what you want to put into it. But your letter must be such that is relevant, is realistic, and it is purposeful and goes to the point to address the issue you want to address succinctly and clearly. it must also stand the test of time. And you will see almost all the letters stand the test of time. Whether it's the letter on apartheid in South Africa, or on Ian Smith in Rhodesia, or between Nkomo and Mugabe, there are letters that you can say stand the test of time. And then when I read some of the letters in the book as put by Musikelu, and then I said to myself, and some of you have said that, what gave me the courage? So I then look at the letter at this book and say, well, look, if you ask me to give it a title and not the title of the Letterman, I will title it Audacity of an Optimist. Audacity of an Optimist. Because the thing again about the letter is not personal. You are not self-centered, selfish about it. It's about something that is it goes beyond you. And most of the letters that you find here, when there was nothing personal to me about them. Interest of the community, the society, the organization that I belong to, the military, the war front. How should the war be fought so that we minimize casualties, so that we can deal with it quickly and finish it up, and the country can move on? Or in the fight against apartheid, what should Britain do? And you will find in all these, not only do I write letters, in some cases I also proffer solution. And that must be what to do. Some solutions are practical, some are a little bit unique. Like the solution is not in the letter. I think I put it in one of my books. Solution that I proffered for Nkomo and Mugabe. We were giving them money, we were giving them weapons, we were giving them ammunition. And suddenly, they turned this thing against themselves. So I will ask Nkomo to come and see me and Mugabe. When Nkomo came, Mugabe will not come. When Mugabe came, Nkomo will not come. And one day, both of them came together. And I thought that was the day we will resolve the issue. So I got 2 pistols loaded, and I invited them to my office, and we sat on comfortable chairs like the one Bishop Kuka is sitting on now. And I said to them, we are not here for ideological warfare. We are here, and our own concern, Nigeria, is that for wherever we as black human beings created by God, we are looked down upon or mistreated as a result of our color, we must fight against it. And that's what we are here for. So, we were giving you money, we were giving you weapons, you started turning them against yourself. Now, we want to have a duel. I want you to have a duel. Here are two pistols. They are loaded. I make sure that they see that they are loaded. And I will give one, you face yourself, and I will say, go. Whoever dies will be buried here. The one who survives will be sent back to go and finish the war. And Nkomo will say, what? What? No, you are a man providing unique solution to a unique problem. I say, yes. They left me and formed Patriotic Front. And Patriotic Front finished the job. So the question I've been asked, how did we do this? I think we probably don't appreciate what we have as a country. And I believe if we do appreciate it and make good use of it, we will do better than we are now. I sent for an interview with the only remaining member of what they call the 12 disciples in the Foreign Service. That's the 12 Nigerians who first joined the Foreign Service before our independence. Ambassador Gusulore is the only remaining one. And in that interview, he said that when Nigeria became independence, it was a giant in the sun. That was the expectation. Not a giant even in Africa, a giant in the sun. That was the expectation of the world about Nigeria. Have we lived up to it? No. If we haven't, why haven't? Why haven't we? And it's not so far to seek. Since somebody talk about Jimmy Carter visiting Nigeria. Of course, he did visit Nigeria, but before he visited Nigeria, we were struggling with America, something they call constructive engagement with South Africa. What can be constructive with apartheid? And we said, no, we don't accept that. So Kissinger said he was coming to Nigeria 3 times, and 3 times I said I will not receive him. You may say that's madness. Yes, maybe there's a touch of madness. You have to do what is right. And then, of course, there was this election coming. If Ford, it was Ford and Jimmy Carter, if Ford won the election, I will have to do acrobatic. I will not be able to say that America cannot come to Nigeria for 4 years. So before the election, we started to look for who was in the camp of Jimmy Carter, and we found Andy Young. So we made a beeline to Andy Young before the election. And when the election took place, Carter won. And within 2 weeks of his being sworn in, he sent Andy Young to us. We became very close with Andy Young. To the extent, and with Carter administration, to the extent that Carter administration will not do anything in Africa without informing us. I don't say they take permission from us, but they will tell us. Now, people ask me, how did we lose that? Then I leave it to you. How did we lose it? Only this morning, or was it yesterday, I had something that shocked me. Here, at our door, Chad, when Idris Deby was killed or died. Some people said he was shot from the back when he was in the war front, and therefore, if he was shot from the back, he had not died from enemy's bullet, but he died. And it was Doha that decided to pull the different elements in Chad together, not Nigeria. And Chad is at our door. We didn't do anything about that. I believe, to say the least, is not good enough. Now, I just believe that somebody said, well, look, how do you make leaders? We are in the process now. Again, I believe that God is a Nigerian. Bishop Kuka may not agree. I believe God is a Nigerian because God loves us so much that we have done so many stupid things, and He has allowed us to get away with these stupid things. I hope and sincerely hope that God's patience has no limit of elasticity. Because if it does, there will soon be a day that God will say, look, I've had enough. And if God says He has had enough, it doesn't matter. You can write 20 books on Letterman and Letterwomen. It won't help us. So, I believe the right lesson must be learned. We have all that we need to have. God has given ourselves that we need to have. That we are not doing what we should do is not God. God is not to blame. We should blame ourselves. And as you rightly said, let this book be circulated. He hasn't, as he himself said, I will now go, now that I've read this book, I will even now go back to my letters and see there must be a few that you didn't show. But when you are having that conversation, for the fact that you did not take my permission, you went into my archive, you connived with some of my staff, and you did what you have done. I was trying to seek advice from Bishop Kuka what I should do with you. And Bishop Kuka started saying, well, prayer. This is not matter of prayer. This is matter of misconduct that must be punished. And then Senator, former Governor Dixon came here. And then I remember that he's a lawyer, a non-practicing lawyer. Now, when he started practicing, I will take you before him. And then you will know where you are for doing what you have done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daddy. Thank you very much. Let's keep the applause going. Thank you, sir. Thank you. We are indeed grateful. We are indeed grateful. We are indeed grateful. While that is on, may I quickly invite the chairman of Premium Times Publications Limited to give the vote of thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Muskidu, well done, all. Thank you, sir. Oh, you use this? Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency President Olusegun Obasanjo, Your Excellencies, former Governor, ministers, our comrades in journalism, ladies and gentlemen, it gives us great pleasure to witness this occasion of launching the book, The Letterman. When our colleague Mojid sent me a message that he is writing this book and he is launching it very soon, I wrote to him. I said, Mojid, why did you get the time to write this kind of a book? When I began to read the book, I now saw the reason why this book is very important. It is timely, and we need to have this kind of books to be written for our leaders so that we appreciate them while they are there. Baba Obasanjo, you are Baba of Nigeria. You are Baba of Africa. We appreciate everything that you have done to this part of the world. We appreciate what you have done to Africa. We appreciate what you have done to humanity. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you all for having the time to grace this occasion. But one thing we promise you is you will continue to see, on behalf of Premium Times Board and Directors of Premium Times Management and Staff, we will continue to write Letterman number 2. This is Letterman number 1 because it was not authorized, but we will do the authorized one where we will seek to get the permission of His Excellency to write even deeper and even more profound letters that will be of immense importance and significance to our nation building. Thank you all. I will wish you all safe journey to your various destinations. Thank you all.
Thank you all so very much. Please, while we remain standing, our distinguished guests, we thank you for all you have done for us today and the support you have lent. Thank you, and God bless you all.